So welcome everybody. We're really excited to get started. This is our, I think it's our 8th showcase of the year with different variations. And we have a really wonderful event today. We have some really exciting panelists from corporations, from VCs and other investment funds, and also from government sector. And we have 17 fantastic startups. So first and foremost, we're excited to learn from the panelists and as they share their wisdom and they challenge the startups with their questions as they look for business synergies, and also for the deep tech startups to hear about your innovations and hear about your businesses. So without further ado, let's get started. Just a little background about us in the showcase. We're a business development consultancy for deep tech startups, but also for the ecosystem of deep tech. And our singular mission is to help new solutions and new deep technologies outside of the life sciences to make it to market. And we do so together with our ecosystem partners of investors, corporations, and government stakeholders. Our focus is on deep tech deliberately so because we're excited about the technology that is being unraveled, which is helping us solve different challenges that we face societally, governmentally, corporations, and also just technology that gets us excited to come to work each day. And so we've developed an ecosystem, which is a business community for deep tech. Which includes, on the one hand, startups, and on the other hand, stakeholders. For the startups, Asher, I see that you have the wrong slide deck, but just see if you can make sure you have the updated one, but we'll keep on going from it. For startups, it includes, what we do for the startups is business strategy for the deep tech startup. It also includes content and helping with content and design. In other words, to get these startups to the place where they're ready to be facing a government stakeholder or a tech scout from a major corporation, or to answer the tough questions that are going to be asked by investors, and also pitching at the showcase events themselves. Asher, maybe let me share the slides on my screen. Can everybody see the slides on my screen? Good. What we do this under a number of different labels. We have Showcase, we have Kissing Frog Studios, we have Deep Tech Capital, we have Deep Tech Strategy, where each label helps in a different startups in a different way. Showcase helps with running the community, the ecosystem of deep tech stakeholders, as well as the innovators themselves. Kissing Frog Studios helps with the design and the content creation for refining your pitch, but also we have Deep Tech Strategy, which assists companies with understanding where they're at for market, and Capital, which helps them connect to investors. So what we're doing here under these different labels is we're helping these deep tech startups, which are tech strong, but not necessarily business strong, or that are business strong, but haven't yet identified a secondary or tertiary market to do so. Stakeholders we define by those individuals that through capital or through contracting mechanisms have the ability to help deep tech startups make it to market. And that includes from public sector, federal, state, and city representatives, stakeholders from government, from major corporations, the tech scouts, which are looking for maybe for either a merger and acquisition opportunity, a CVC type investment or strategic investment, but also for partnerships, subcontractors on prime government contracts, or co-development of product, or to be a client. And of course, there are investors that are looking for companies that not only is the technology worthwhile to get excited about, but because the technology is applicable across a wide variety of markets, the ability for these companies to make a business impact is large. For stakeholders, what we're doing is we're helping them discover some of the greatest startups that are out there, and it's the exciting technology which could help, for instance, in the case of government or corporations, to help them solve pain points which these governments or these corporations are facing. We help the companies also to come to speed, so that that at the end of the day, the business metrics can match up. We also help corporations and government with tech scouting, which goes beyond the ecosystem, for companies that are based out of the US, Europe, and of course Israel. 3 axi or axis of opportunity. By the way, who knew that the plural of axis is axes or axi? For the deep tech startup are the following. It's venture capital, which we are all very familiar with. It's corporate partnerships, which the different types of channel partners that we can have with for corporate organizations, and it's government business through 2 different primary mechanisms. One is through non-dilutive R&D means, and the other is from contracts and pilot contracts. And for the deep tech startup, these are the 3 critical gateways or gatekeepers which enable these startups to make it to market and become successful. The showcase is there because you would think it'd be pretty simple. On the one hand, you have innovation. On the other hand, you have the stakeholder. It should be easy to pair the 2, but that's not the case because there's a lot of noise out there. And that noise blocks the gate. It doesn't allow the really truly innovative startups to necessarily get through the gate. And that's true because as the innovators are very strong in the business, maybe the UX isn't the greatest UX, and maybe you lose them with a flat pitch. But at the end of the day, that's the technology is changing the world and changing your organization. And so therefore, we find it to be extremely important to work with these types of startups because they deserve the platform. And of course, it takes a village to make sure that these startups make it to market. We work with companies on a 9-month membership, which includes, of course, all the different elements and the different labels that we mentioned before, where we're really trying to create synergies between the startups, the investors, the corporations, and the government stakeholders which participate in the network. Of course, we also run events. And a monthly event, as we're on the August 19th event, the Autonomous Systems, we have some really exciting events coming up as well. So stay tuned to the end of the year. And in 2022, we're going to be rolling out our lineup. So today, we're just going to talk about, in this moment, we're just going to talk about the panelists for the open topic, because that's what's up next. Just so you know the lineup, we're going to have 3 sessions, starting with an open topic, which is not necessarily connected to the autonomy theme. And we have some really great panelists here, including Colonel Stephen Potter, Chad Stelzig, Avi Lindenbaum, Dana Jensen, Kenny Vasai, Bob Christopher, Desri Grogan, Tina Tasakawang, Rajesh Ramanujam, Han Ko, Joshua Davis Court, and Whitney McNamara. The companies pitching in the open topic are Evoke Nano, Boxlock, 8i, Newboro, Argenteel, Silicon Core Technology, and Precursor SBC. We're going to be, after the open topic, we're going to be moving on to our autonomous vehicles and drones panels. I'm not going to introduce the panelists at this stage. We'll introduce them in front of the second session, and we're going to be hearing from 5 incredible companies. Last but not least, we're going to be moving on to our last session, and we'll talk about that right when we get to it. The next showcase coming up on the calendar is advanced materials and electronics. So if that's an area of interest for you from panelists or from a company perspective, please be in touch with us. We're going to have 3 sessions as is our tradition: open topic, advanced materials, and then the 3rd session is electronics and semiconductors. So it should be a really great event. This is a little bit about us. This is our team. My name is Josh Baron. I'm the managing director. You'll see on the line today, we're going to be joined by Asher Rudensky, Yuval Herman, and Leora Moore. But we have a great team led by our founder, Ariel Schatz. Just a quick announcement. We run a program which is seasonal, based around when AFWERX produces their results, called the MOU Club. And so just stay tuned. If you are an AFWERX Phase 1 winner and you're looking to get an MOU, we're very dedicated to this process. We run it in conjunction with our sister company, Eagle Point Funding, where we help companies through the MOU process. A little bit about our network. We're comprised of a number of different organizations. Argentum, which is our sister company, they focus on EU grant opportunities. They also work with, they basically work with any EU or EU affiliated country. So any companies coming out of anywhere in the EU, UK, Switzerland, Israel. Then there's Eagle Point Funding, which is a US grant consultancy focused on technology outside of life science, working through opportunities from the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, and NASA, Department of Energy, and other agencies, and of course the Deep Tech Showcase. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via our website or to contact one of us by email. Pretty easy. Take our name and add Deep Tech Showcase, and your email will reach one of us. So without further ado, we're going to get started with our open topic.
Hey, Clive, are you on here?
I am.
Perfect. Let me know if you could share your screen.
We're joined by
disabled screen sharing for me.
We'll get it in just a second. We're joined by Clive Cook from Precursor SPC. Clive will introduce himself in a second, but he has two really interesting applications for some incredibly deep technology. I believe today we're going to be talking about space weather nowcast, but also really incredible for early warning for earthquakes, which Clive maybe will just tease us about a little bit on the session.
Can everybody see my screen there?
You're all good to go.
Okay, great. Good morning, good afternoon, some of you. I'm Clive Cook, co-founder and CEO of Precursor SPC. I quote from one of the conversations we had during our contract with US Space Force: space weather capability is 50 years behind where terrestrial weather capability is today. Precursor is a commercial company focused on providing actionable information in advance of important geospatial events. We provide real-time, high-fidelity space weather mapping. This is space weather nowcasting. This first-of-a-kind capability provides actionable information on how the changing space weather environment directly impacts space-based and terrestrial assets, operations, and plans. The capability we're presenting today was born from the ionospheric monitoring and surveillance innovations we developed for commercial earthquake forecasting. Space weather is dynamic, uncontrollable, and extremely variable over the course of any given day. Space weather adversely impacts operational performance and mission assurance. I want to recount two actual space weather situations. In the first situation, an ongoing aurora event disrupted tracking and communications to surveillance aircraft and interceptors monitoring adversary incursions over Northern Europe. And the same space weather event caused positioning errors for commercial aircraft flying from Europe to North America. Space weather severely impacted performance. In a second situation, throughout a multi-day war games exercise in the Baltics, the ionosphere was changing constantly, disturbing ISR satellite communications and operation. Space situational awareness was blind. In both situations, the space weather environment directly impacts the performance of the space asset operator and space warfighter. In both situations, the need for real-time space weather situational awareness is palpable. Screen is frozen. Okay, my screen is frozen. Can you? Uh-oh, I'm frozen.
It's all right. Keep telling us the story. Keep it going with the pitch, and we'll get on with the slides in a second.
Okay. Do you want to put yours up? Your version up? The same version as mine.
It's okay. Roll with it. Well, you've all work on getting up the slides. Well, in the meantime, just keep telling us the next slide as if it was showing.
Okay. Current space situational awareness solutions fall short. The space weather environment analysis shown here, not shown here, is the actual daily space weather report. Is a static report using an imperfect, non-representative depiction of the ionosphere, there it is, due to over-reliance on models and outdated sensors. It provides generic information about global phenomenon with almost no assessment of how the space weather environment will impact space assets, operations, or planning. This is space weather reporting 50 years behind space terrestrial weather reporting. This snapshot of the space environment is useful for rerouting assets and communication pathways around dangerous weather areas. It cannot inform operators of hourly or minute-by-minute changes. They cannot anticipate human interventions into the ionosphere. A space weather model does not tell the warfighter or satellite operator or electric grid operator what they are experiencing at any given moment. What if the space weather meteorologist, warfighter, satellite operator, electric grid provider had the capability to monitor in real time the space weather environment with high fidelity and to assess its impact on assets, operational performance, and mission assurance? Next. Great. Precursor has developed a unique 4D time plus volume space weather technology, space weather nowcasting. It's not a model, it's what's actually happening in real time. This first of a kind capability takes advantage of new and existing satellite systems and sensors to assimilate all perspectives in real time using a sophisticated machine learning technique to deliver a 1,000 times gain in both spatial and temporal resolution. The video here presents the actual real-time space weather conditions. We create a real-time map of the ionosphere by measuring hundreds of different perspectives of the ionosphere from GNSS, LEO, ionoson, radio occultation, specialized sensors, and radar systems. You can see each of these data points gathering data points that are and satellites as their orbits cross the sky. Space weather nowcasting captures the real-time evolution of the ionosphere and uses an innovative and state-of-the-art AI-based data fusion capability to deliver unmatched dynamic space situational awareness. With this ionosphere information over a specific area in real time, we can directly determine how the changing space weather will dynamically impact the warfighter, satellite operator, commercial aerospace at that important critical moment in time. Next, please. This operational space weather platform is one of the most effective dynamic space weather solutions in the world. Precursor is seeking a PEO for a space weather focused SBIR2 and is raising $3 million in a Series seed round to advance the company to the next milestones and begin commercial launch of our data subscription services. Thank you for your time. Sorry about the video.
We're all good. Thank you so much, Clive. We're going to open up the floor to questions. Just for moving forward, anybody who has their first question can jump right in. And to make it easier for anybody else who has additional questions, raise your hand and so we know how to get to you. Any questions for Clive?
I have a question. This is Bob Christopher, Mitsubishi Chemical. So Panasonic has a technology for weather forecasting. They use it, they have a sensors they attach to commercial aircraft that collect the data real time as the planes are approaching and landing in airports. So they collect more regional specific data. I guess my question is, how does what layer of information do you add to that? And how does it correlate to those type of weather systems? I guess I'm wondering, where's the gap? What's missing for weather systems that isn't being captured today? I mean, maybe you can explain the correlation between space weather and actual atmospheric weather. I don't know that. I'm just trying to connect the dots in my mind.
No problem. So the atmosphere is made up of multiple layers, right? The lithosphere, which is kind of the ground, the troposphere, which is where what you call atmospheric weather resides. And then above that is the ionosphere. And then past that, you go into deep space. So commercial aircraft fly within that band of ground to maybe as high as 20 kilometers up. The ionosphere which is where all the satellites sit, where all the communications is facilitated, where different launch vehicles travel into and through, where missiles and radar pass through. That sits from about 50 kilometers above the surface of the Earth to 1,200 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. So the sensors that you're looking at, that they look at to gather tropospheric weather, don't measure, they measure, moisture, air pressure, things like that. What we're measuring in the ionosphere, because the great part of the ionosphere, it's electrically charged, is the energy, electrical energy that resides in that band from 50 kilometers to 1,200 kilometers. And that dramatically affects all, electronics, communication, navigation, guidance, all that stuff. So they're very different and very distinct in their use cases.
Is there a correlation between the two? I'm kind of interested. Reason why I'm asking about this is that Panasonic, where I was heading up innovation, we did a big project around weather forecasting and looking at crops and how to obviously affect agriculture. So we had developed our own solutions, and I just mentioned that with the our avionics group. But I guess
certainly some of the analytic techniques would be similar, but the data sets are completely different.
So maybe then let me step back a little bit and say it's a different customer base than I guess you're looking at. So because I'm thinking more about geographically specific areas, and in this case agriculture, but also forecasting weather for different reasons. So that's more topical, more geographic based. So you're more space based. Is that correct? So you're basically providing information to satellite systems and to communication companies. Is that where I guess, tell me what the focus is on that.
Our focus is providing that real-time, high-fidelity ionospheric mapping capability to satellite operators, to national security organizations, to communications organizations, to organizations that are looking for very high fidelity, very high resolution positioning, navigation, and tracking.
Okay.
I want to give Chad a chance to ask a question, because he had his hand up at the last question. But listen, if we get to this level of questioning, then there's clearly more to talk about. So I think Clive and Bob have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, Clive, my question, you had mentioned one of the potential applications being electric grid operators, or one of the potential customers. Help me understand the value that you're bringing to an electric grid operator with the insights about the condition of the ionosphere. Help me put that together.
Sure. The ionosphere captures or shields us from ongoing and specific solar events that happen, whether it's solar flares or coronal mass ejections, or it's just the daily changes in the magnetic field and energy from space and from the geomagnetic Earth. That directly impacts the grid operators and was shown many times to overload systems, electric grid systems, transmission lines, distribution centers, and even in some cases, generation stations. All of those, power grid organizations, or organizations which have large antennas, like pipeline companies, like railways, are directly affected by geomagnetic events.
Awesome.
All right.
We're gonna.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. We're gonna hold it here. We have questions from Hanko from USACO. That's gonna have to wait. Joshua Davis from Space Force, Rajesh from Applied Ventures, and you also have a question on offer in the chat. So make sure you follow up, Clive, with all of those, and we're gonna move right on to Silicon Core.
Okay, so should I be sharing my screen?
Whatever you have, whatever you're organized with Yuval. Is Yuval sharing the slides?
I've got them. I'm more comfortable if I'm running through.
Can you guys
than
not
telling somebody-
see? Can you guys not see the screen right now? Because I'm sharing his pitch.
I can, but then I have to tell you every time I want you to change a slide.
Well, we're short on time, Jim. So I think we should just
Yeah,
go for it.
always best to let us share because of less technical
Okay.
issues.
All right, here we go. Hey everybody, my name is Jim Wickenheiser. I'm Senior Vice President for Strategic Initiatives with Silicon Core. We make direct view LED displays. Those are different than what you would find in, say, Best Buy, where they're saying LED displays. Those are actually LCD displays that have LED backlights. And what we make are actual tricolor LED displays that you're looking at directly, thus the name. Next slide. So we've identified a need. Current displays out there are very inefficient and they're very low brightness. And they're also not very ruggedized. So direct view LED actually can solve all of those issues. It's very efficient, very high brightness, and we can ruggedize our displays in a way that current tech just can't. We're targeting this for vehicles, training, simulation, as well as command and control. We've been fortunate enough to already deploy to training, simulation, command and control, but we've got vehicles in our sights. So one of the things about direct view LED that is different than current displays is it's actually very easy to go large with direct view LED. It's very difficult to go small. And so we're on the cusp of some breakthroughs that can actually allow for us to start going into some of these smaller pitch applications like vehicles. Next slide. Next. We're a global company. We've already got 10 offices worldwide, 170 employees, 80 of those are R&D. We've already got 28 patents granted just for direct view LED. We also have the ability to manufacture in the US and Taiwan. So if you have TAA compliance requirements, we're already able to fulfill those requirements. We've already deployed well over 200 displays worldwide, and we've got more in the pipeline. But what we're focused on today is actually some innovations that are beyond what we've been currently doing. So next slide. Perennial award winner. We're always driving the technology forward. We're known for that in our industry. We're typically winning awards like Best in Show, Best New Product, Most Innovative, all of that type of thing. You can see more of our awards on our website, but we've been around for several years and we continue to push the tech forward. Next slide. So we believe the future of display technology is direct view LED, and we are the architects of that future. One of the great things about direct view LED is it's very flexible. We can do any shape, any size, any resolution. It's completely customizable to any environment. Extremely bright. And the reason why brightness is important is it's not just that we can go very high dynamic range. It's also that we can go into very difficult lighting environments like direct sunlight. And so with our displays, you can still see a very good image, even if the sun is directly beating on it. And so again, we see a lot of really good use cases in both military tactical vehicles that are deployed in the field, but also what you guys are covering in the next section, autonomous vehicles. We see more and more displays going into EVs and autonomous vehicles, and they have very difficult requirements for both brightness tolerance as well as ruggedization, because people are going to be interacting with them all the time. We provide 16-bit color, which gives you a great image quality, great grayscale, very efficient. LED is the most efficient light source. And so it's green, it's cool, runs cool, and it runs quiet. The other thing that we can bring with LED is high refresh rates. So not just the standard 120 hertz, 240 hertz that you're used to hearing about, but the LEDs actually refresh at about 3,800 hertz. And this minimizes eye fatigue, and it also minimizes motion blur. Next slide. That brings us into what our core technologies are. So we have a patented common cathode approach. So there's two ways of driving LEDs. One is common cathode, which is the way we drive it, and the other is common anode, which is the way everybody else in the industry drives LEDs. The problem with common anode is you require a resistor on the red, and so resistor means heat, and it's less power efficient. So driving a common cathode, we're allowed to drive brighter and cooler, which makes for much easier requirements in terms of cooling. So no fans are required for ours. Next slide. Next one is our ZAC technology. As I mentioned, we're able to achieve 16 bits per color. We're able to achieve this by actually checking the impedance on the PCB for each trace, as well as the LED itself. And then we account for that through our algorithm. And so we get a perfectly uniform image. And that 16 bits, just to give you a reference point, the kind of the highest bit depth that you'll see kind of mainstream is in digital cinema, and they go 12 bits. And so we're orders of magnitude better in terms of our bit depth. Next slide.
Tim, 30-second warning.
Okay. So our we also have a patented encapsulation technology called LISA. So it's very ruggedized. In the past, these type of displays have been very prone to breakage, but with our LISA technology, we're able to ruggedize the front as well as the enclosure. Next slide. So we also modified the control system to make that much more efficient, more power efficient. It has reduced frame delay, and we go from a system, an architecture that injected 6 watts of extra power, and we've reduced that down to about 310 milliwatts. So it's incredible, again, power and efficiency. Next slide. Next slide. So again, simulation training, tactical control rooms, vehicle displays are all great use cases for this. Again, okay, we'll just go next slide. I think we've talked about those already. And then leadership team, we've got well over 70 cumulative years of experience in both ASIC development as well as AV. Next slide. And yeah, you can cycle through these fairly quickly. These are just some examples of some of our deployments. That's the Wynn Casino Sportsbook, Harvard Business, Microsoft flagship stores, which we've got deals with. This one right here is a ruggedized display that's at Citibank right now. These are some of the partners that we've had in the past and currently. You can keep cycling through. Keep going. You can do these fairly quickly. A couple more. I'm trying, Asher. All right, so, and this last one is a simulation environment for the U.S. A U.S. Army combat simulator at Tufts University. So it's a curved display, very beautiful. Anyway, any questions?
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
Oh, can you tell me about your lifetime, your product's lifetime, operational lifetime, and also the color and brightness uniformity? You know, those 2 items that I usually run into at the end. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So typically our LEDs last 100,000 hours. So if you were to run this 24/7, 365, that's just over 11 years. So that's another thing that we bring is longevity. In terms of uniformity, we're extremely uniform because of our approach with the ZAC technology. So we can go down to, I believe it's half a nit and have a completely uniform screen. So, and then our brightness, we go all the way up to, well, we've got one display that we can go as high as 10,000 nit. Now that's got a fairly narrow range of use cases, but a typical display for us will be somewhere between 1,500 nit to 4,000 nit.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Got room for 2 more questions. Let's do Tina, followed by Rajesh.
Yes, I just wonder, it looks like your application is like customized per each customer, right? Do you plan to, become sort of like have the standard products and then pump it out large scale?
Right.
What do you see as your go-to-market strategy?
Right. So we do have a standardized product that we deploy. We typically go into more customized environments currently, but with the vehicle displays, we anticipate those to be standardized on what our customer requirements are. So obviously, if they've got you know, a run of 10,000 vehicles, we're going to standardize something for that run of cars. And we have partners in place that can do some high run manufacturing.
I believe Whitney had a question. You all.
Yeah, my question. Yeah, I was going to say
she had her hand raised before me. Sorry.
I'll be quick. I just wanted to understand what the comparative advantage is in direct LED compared to other tech, like front end technologies for synthetic environments like LiDAR.
So you know, Eric, you might be able to answer that one a little bit better than me. You know LiDAR better than I do. We have our CEO online as well. I'm not sure if
LiDAR, I don't know. Actually, Jim, I don't know
okay.
that technology very well. So
okay.
we don't encounter those kind of competition in general.
Yeah, I mean, I know LiDAR in terms of kind of a radar replacement. I don't know LiDAR in terms of a display replacement. So for us, we're in the business of creating incredible images. So if you're talking about, for example, if a LiDAR is feeding the image into a display, we're able to display that very well, but we're not experts on LiDAR. Sorry.
We have time for one more question for me.
I have one question for you.
10-second question, you can go for it. But if it's going to take an hour to answer, we're going to have trouble.
All right.
Okay. Question is, well, who's up here? Josh? Go ahead.
Rajesh, then we're going to move on to the next one.
Okay.
All right. Just curious. It looks like an interesting technology that's great for large-scale displays and customized applications. What is it that you need in terms of funding or financing to address the automotive applications? I didn't see that clearly spelled out here.
Right. Yeah. So basically, we're looking for a partner to help us fund kind of that next step. So Eric, I don't know if you wanted to speak to the specifics on that.
Yeah, thank you. So we're looking for about $10 million to focus on a vehicle standardized display. So like pitch 300 micron and eventually maybe down to like cell phone range. So focus on technology and associated electronics developments.
It's at 10, right? Sorry, I didn't.
10 million,
yes, 10. Yes.
10.
Okay, got it. Okay, I have more questions, but I think I can follow up offline afterwards.
Okay, great. Let's do that.
Jim and Eric, before I follow up with Rajesh, and also I think that Bob also had a question. So
great.
We're sure to follow up. So thank you very much, Jim, Eric from Silicon Core. Up next is Argentile, presenting is Steve Kelly.
Hi, quick mic check. I assume you can hear me.
Sounds great.
Okay. Hello, I'm Steve Kelly. I'm a CEO and one of the founders of a company called Argentile. And what we're about is automating DevOps automation. That's supposed to confuse you a bit. What we do is we glue together all the existing tools and allow you to mix different languages in a DevOps environment. Next slide. So what is DevOps, just to make sure you know? It's the process of getting application changes implemented in production. Click an example of that. Bill, please. An example of that. Click. An example of that is when the banks are trying to get the pandemic loan applications up nationally. Getting it to work in a lab is one thing. Getting it across the country is another. Build, please. So this basic software activity is common to almost every industry segment. We're working with the military through the Air Force, and we're working with several enterprises, but it really applies to anyone deploying software. Next. Gartner looks at this industry this way. The dev side of DevOps is getting pretty well organized because of agile techniques. The ops side of DevOps is not that well organized and still kind of scrambling around. Click. They estimate it to be about a $6 billion very active market. Click. One example of what Argentine did for the Air Force in that space is they needed to deploy 2 applications on any hybrid combination of AWS and Azure with no prerequisites. Next. That took 20 days of original scripting, but worse than that, if you wanted to customize the original script to do one certain deploy, that took at least a day of work all by itself. Click. Argentine, however, was able to compile and deploy any combination of AWS and Azure from that original scripting in less than 10 minutes. That's a pretty big advantage. It saves a lot of time. Click. And time is important here because these are typically $200 an hour resources. Next. We've done some project for enterprises, one for HP, where we took an 8-hour task and did it in 40 minutes. One for a Microsoft partner, where we took a 38-hour task and did it in 3 hours. Those are kind of 90% savings. And then finally, something that Dimension Data had done a number of times, and it had taken at least 200 hours, we were able to do in an 8-hour unattended overnight run. And you might notice this applies to applications or infrastructure or both. Next. How do we do that? We have a patented compiler that you feed with the libraries. The libraries can come from anywhere, but they generally come from the people that are doing the work. Once you have the libraries perfected, click. There's you supply only a high-level workflow and the data for the project, and click. It outputs the automated orchestrated deployment execution script that you can take and run. So custom libraries that can be private, public, or classified inform the patented compiler. And where do you get the libraries? Well, you start with the scripts you already have, and we process them. Next. So we automate DevOps orchestration, not just store, retrieve, and rewrite scripts, which is what the industry typically does. Next slide. What does Gartner say about this? We've talked with them quite a bit. They have not seen anything like it because of the way it worked. It's differentiated against all the incumbents. And why? Because you start with the scripts you already have, and that will resonate with engineers. They hate learning new languages. And everyone talks one way or another about starting over from scratch. Next. The benefits to the user is, the first one is the same. You start with scripts you already have. But our approach lets you automate everything. And so the libraries capture the tribal detail that tends to walk around in people's heads. And when they leave, you lose that tribal knowledge, but not if it's coded into the library. It also helps you organize a DevOps team because your smartest guys work on the libraries and your next level of engineers uses them, and it gives you a way to manage a large team. Beyond that, it obviously eliminates human error, and it clearly is a productivity tool, as we showed, 90% reduction in time in a lot of cases. Next.
30-second warning, Steve.
Okay, here's a screenshot of the product. We'd be happy to demo it for anyone that wants to see it. That's enough for now. Next. Our active accounts are the Air Force, and we're currently doing a project to automate Active Directory deployment. They have brought us people they want to use our technology for, Intelligent Wave and Intuitex. Our biggest enterprise partner is Worldwide Technologies, and we recently signed an agreement to be the installation partner for Polyverse. Our revenue for profit will be about $3 million this year, so we're still pretty small. That's at a 15% profit, and our paying customers right now are the Air Force and Worldwide Technology. Where are we going next? We want to introduce our SaaS version of the product this quarter. Obviously, that will generate more users and more case studies. We'd like to recruit a lead investor and prepare for a Series A in 2022, somewhere around the idea that $2 a share would generate a $20 million valuation. Next, that's Argentine. That's what we mean by automating DevOps automation. If you'd like to know more, please contact me, and I would love to take your questions.
Wonderful.
Hello, sir.
Go ahead,
Josh, do you mind if I just dive in?
Jump in.
Hey, thank you very much. This really stuck out to me because I'm working right now to conduct requirements engineering and all the operations associated with bringing half a dozen satellites into launch. So as you can imagine, it's a very complex operation. Most of our requirements engineering and systems engineering is performed by SAIC and Gartner. So as a Space Force guy, hearing you mention Gartner is very heartwarming. Now, is there any way that you could get Gartner to help push this product? Because for me, I don't even have to take this to my PEO. I don't have to walk this down the hall. If you can get somebody like them to come alongside and say, this is a very good path forward. And it could actually move fairly quickly if you do that.
I think if you ask Gartner to talk about us, they are absolutely prepared, and you and I could get together and organize something. That's doable. I mean, we're a paying Gartner client. That's an important step.
Yeah, that always helps. I am too.
Chris Saunderson, if you happen to know him, would be a good guy to reach out to.
He's in Colorado Springs, isn't he?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I think I know him already.
Okay, cool. So you have a good synergy right there. Let's open up the question for Kenny, aside from Google.
Yes, Steve, thanks for the presentation. You had healthcare as one of the verticals in one of your earlier slides. Have you had any traction with the healthcare industry, any use cases?
We do not have a healthcare use case yet, but I know because of the nature of the software that it belongs in that space. Remember, right at the moment, we're just pre-product because we've used the Air Force to develop all the ease of use tools so that someone else can use our compiler, and that's where we're at right now.
Okay, yeah, I'll be interested in exploring that further.
Cool.
Thank you.
Go ahead with Josh.
Hi, Steve. Question for you about whether your DevOps platform can accommodate ML workloads, or I've heard there are a few ML ops platforms you've looked at which claim that the traditional DevOps platform cannot necessarily handle an ML workload because of the constant need to change the code or retrain the software.
Is ML a scripting language?
No, this is machine learning.
Machine
learning and AI. Okay.
We use machine learning to sort out all the scripts, but whether it would apply in that specific instance, I'd have to get you together with my head of development. Happy to do that.
Okay.
And he knows machine learning and AI pretty well.
Okay. I'm sure this is a fairly large use case outside of the smaller subset of ML specific applications, but just curious to understand how.
Well, I'm the one thing I'm sure of is if you're deploying software that does ML, we don't do ML, we deploy it. It will do that.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, real quick, do you happen to know of a scripting language you use, like Python, Terraform?
I'm not sure what the specific ML language that's used for neural network training, but I know there are use cases within my company that use both ML traditional and then deep learning or neural network training as well.
So I will bet you that it will work in your application, but I'm not sure.
Okay. I'll be sure to mention your company to the right people and see if they have any interest in following up.
Super, thank you.
Wonderful. We need to move on to the next presentation, but be sure to follow up. I think Hanko from Isako also has a question. So next up is BoxLock. Thank you very much, Steve from Argenteel. Presenting for BoxLock is Brad, CEO of BoxLock.
Josh, thank you. I'm Brad Rufkus. I'm the CEO and founder of BoxLock, the supply chain access control platform. I'm joined today by my CCO, Andrew Kelly. And if you go to the next slide, we're here representing an incredible team of technologists and supply chain leaders and experts. I'm a big believer in surround yourselves with people who have forgotten more than you'll ever have the opportunity to learn. And so we're very fortunate. If you go to the next slide, as everybody knows, right, supply chain, logistics, freight, transportation, it's this game of this need for constant iterative improvement. And one of those improvements that's made a very big difference on the next slide is the introduction of the barcode in 1974. It's really the piece that ties together in the data transfer across supply chains. Next. Increasingly, right, supply chains are focusing on these long horizon innovations like we're talking about today, while at the same time needing to realize these immediate productivity gains. And so in talking with our customers and our clients and our advisors and our partners on the next slide, accessing a company's supply chain can be their biggest weakness, right? Whether that's missed deliveries, whether that's unproductive stops, whether that's downtime because you're waiting on parts, waiting on someone to go grab a set of keys or going to grab a set of keys, lack of visibility, they all just add up to added labor costs. In the next slide, what we believe is that controlling access to a company's supply chain can be their most powerful ally, right? It can open up things to 24/7, 365, get on-demand pickup, have parts closer to the point of use, give visibility and full chain of custody, and be able to do that 24/7, 365 anywhere. And so on the next slide, our technology, next slide, I think this is a dated deck, but that's fine. Next slide, our technology, every barcode is able to be a key, right? And so our devices have a barcode scanner in them and are connected. And so if you go to the next slide, what we do is inventory access and security solutions. We're helping leading healthcare operations and logistics companies realize that tomorrow's savings today by making their supply chains more efficient, more accountable, and more reliable wherever assets are stored and transferred. And so we make hardware devices that are ruggedized smart locks that have integrated barcode scanners in them, real-time connectivity with the ability to protect and track critical assets. We've got a robust back-end platform that allows you to manage a fleet of devices, control audit logs and inventory management. And then our platform was built from the ground up on top of APIs and SDKs that integrate into other administrative materials management, HR systems, ERP systems, route management systems, et cetera. So if you go to the next slide, our devices come in multiple form factors. We've got a highly ruggedized, highly secure safe lock format. We've got padlock formats for portable security in them. If you go to the next slide, and so we're able to tie all of this together with an advanced, we got the data coming in from our devices. We're able to tie this in to an advanced data stream and event processing system that allows us to do advanced notifications, workflows, inventory processes, and automation. Our devices have real-time intrusion detections and intrusion alerts, so they can tell you if someone's tampering with them. We're doing work in the aviation space where we're actually flagging parts when parts are scanned as whether or not they are certified and the full chain of custody has been maintained on them. If you go to the next slide, what this allows us to do is really these advanced access control capabilities. And so we've got a suite of web-based tools that allow you to do everything from inventory management to signature release. We're working with Zebra on their handheld device, and they've created an application on top of their devices that allows you to open and manage locks from within that. Because our devices are connected, they're able to play a backhaul to sensors. And so we work with environmental sensor companies where we're able to get temperature, humidity levels. We also work with tool companies so we can help them help their customers track tools, not only access tools, checkout tools, but then be able to read the sensors of whether or not they're nearby. Our devices have GPS sensors in them so you can get full track and trace and geolocation capabilities. Next slide.
Hey, Brad, 30-second warning.
Okay, so specimen logistics, we do work in healthcare, specimen logistics. Next slide, aviation, MRO, we're able to scan parts from who took it to the tail number. Next slide to with a serial number and whether or not it was certified. If you just keep running through these, we're able to do inventory management. We're able to do access control and automate audit logging. Next slide, we're doing this unattended delivery. Keep going. Across a broad range of applications, this slide's actually out of date. It's a $41 billion market serviceable addressable market in the supply chain access control industry. Happy to make that information available. Go to the next slide, please. Customer partners and benefits. I mentioned a lot of this. This is some of the companies that we're working with and the value and the benefits that we provide to them. Next slide, please. Momentum, we pivoted last year from primarily residential applications to B2B enterprise applications. It's a very SaaS healthy revenue mix. We're getting over 60% SaaS revenue from 100% hardware revenue in 2020. And it's coming across operations, logistics, and healthcare. Next slide. We'd love to partner with those who have the need where we can help unlock savings today with supply chain access control solutions. And we're planning to be in market for our Series A in Q4. Thank you and appreciate the time.
Thank you, Brad. Opening up the questions.
I have one quick question here, if you don't mind. How does your product works with the existing product, other supply chain management product in case?
I'm sorry, repeat the question. I missed the first part.
Sure. So the customers who already have other supply chain management system, how your product can be integrated or interfaced with it?
Oh, yeah, we interface, it's entirely API based, right? So for instance, we can ingest from HR systems employee IDs and the barcodes that are on employee IDs. And then we can interface back into their ERP systems to understand their SKUs, be able to move inventory in and out. And if they're serialized, we're able to check and then make API calls to determine, okay, is that part certified? Has it been maintained from chain of use?
Gotcha. Right. Thank you. We're working with a couple of customers in that industry, and they might need your product. That's why I asked. Thank you.
We'd love to help.
That's later.
Great to see you. It's been a long time.
Same, Bob.
We met when you first started this idea. It was actually on a piece of paper, I think it was. So really great to see this advancement. I followed this quite a bit when I was at Panasonic, and we talked about that. I'm curious to know what the roadmap looks like on a physical level. So there's the lock itself, but where do you go from there? And specifically around commercial, business to business customers. Are you looking to develop sensors that go beyond the lock itself? I'm just kind of curious to hear what that looks like.
Yeah, from a hardware perspective, we're really, as I mentioned, through the devices. So we're diversifying the types of devices, moving to, a little bit less on the portable side, right, through a cam lock and a more T-lock format. We're doing a lot partnering with sensor companies that integrate sensors, as I'd mentioned. And then the other piece, we are working on a solution where we've got a customer that we're doing an integrated medical cabinet that has RFID solutions, RFID in it. And so we're doing the access control, who's accessed the container, and then everything that's being taken in and out of it, we're able to count the inventory that's being removed. And so we're able to do forward inventory that's consigned, right? Be able to basically bill for it at the time of use and keep it securely on site. And so those are the types of things we're looking at. We're doing some work through our AFWorks grant where we're looking at applying our componentry into other access control solutions that they already have on base.
Awesome. Tina, you want to ask the last question?
Yeah, I thought it looks very impressive and sort of the integrated platform. But where are you in terms of the commercial scale right now? Are you handling the solution, both the hardware, software management to the customer, or are you still actually managing all those logistics, setting up barcodes and access for the customer? Is it really easy to use so that you can get the customer to actually manage their whole supply chain and process, or is it still something that you really need to be hands-on and be the third party to manage the customer's inventory?
We have a range of customers, right? We have customers that can self-service onboard, and we've got great onboarding tools. All the API documentation of it is available at doc.getboxlock.com, doc.bxlck.com. I'll share it in the link. And so we've got a mix, right? We also, in the verticals that we work in, we have a very standardized onboarding process where we start with templates around like lab logistics, for instance, and we're able to work with them to define some of the key business requirements very quickly, and then deploy those and integrate them. And so it ranges from self-service to, we're really working with them in the implementation and integration process. But it all, once it's up and running, it should be, they can self-manage, and that's the way our contracts and agreements are structured.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brad. Thank you. That's Brad from Boxlock, and I think there are already information in the chat about Boxlock, which Andrew put in there. Thank you very much, Brad.
Thank you very much.
Is Newborough. We're joined by Mark Zedeker, who is chairman of Newborough.
Thanks, Josh. So my name's Mark Zedeker. I'm founder and chairman of Newborough Technology, the Blue Laser Company, and I'm here to represent exciting dual-use technology and a tremendous team that's brought this technology to the commercial sector so far. And we're just now coming out of our stealth mode in terms of additive and defense applications. Next slide, please. We started talking with a number of defense folks in the last say 12 months. And in particular, we began talking about, is there a directed energy application for blue laser technology? And what we've discovered and have won a contract on is there is indeed some interesting applications for things such as counter UAS, counter hypersonics, and even offensive weapon systems. From the aerospace side of view, we also won another AFWorks award. And here we're talking about doing large scale additive manufacturing, parts that exceed 1 meter by 1 meter, for example. We've got great support coming out of the Air Force in both of these contracts so far. In terms of e-mobility, we've been doing a tremendous amount of work in the commercial side, where we have over 80 customers engaged with over 20 lasers in the field today, doing applications such as welding batteries, welding motors, welding electronics, welding cell phones. All of these applications focused on welding of thin metals such as copper, which is very difficult to do. As a consequence, we have a great dual-use technology that can be applied in the defense sector as well as the commercial sector. Next slide, please. As we're showing on this chart, we've actually had a good conversation on the left with folks in the directed energy organization about what are the shortcomings of today's high energy lasers. And of course, we're talking about a long time out before a laser of this caliber could be developed. But the bottom line is we've shown that we can transmit the blue laser just as effectively as the IR laser. But the real advantage here is that blue laser light is absorbed much, much greater by all materials than the IR light. As a consequence, we can reduce the time to kill targets by factors of 2 to 10. This is a huge advantage when dealing with missiles and other projectiles that are entering in at 4,000 or 5,000 miles per hour. We've just finished an AFWorks phase 1 SBIR on the right of counter UAS, showing that the blue laser was very, very effective at blinding the drone as well as fatally damaging the drone. Based upon the data that we collected, we've been able to show that these lasers will be effective at ranges in excess of 30 miles for dazzling and effective in excess of 7 miles with only a 1.5 kilowatt laser power level to take out small UAS. As I mentioned, we just finished an AFWorks phase 1. We're looking for an MOU for our phase 2, and we're actively seeking those partners from the Air Force today. Next slide, please. In terms of the electronic side of things, these are some examples in the lower half of this graph showing the excellent battery welding capabilities of this technology. You can see the copper is an absolutely perfect weld, the aluminum, another perfect weld, and bus bars and motor pins. These are all components of e-mobility, energy storage, batteries, e-mobility, motors, cell phones, similar to these bus bar and other foil welds, and electrification of vehicles throughout the Air Force, Army, and Navy are all going to require this kind of technology. As I mentioned, we have over $2 million in beta sales out to date. We're just now coming out of that stealth mode. Our final product will launch Q4 2021. We have approximately 80 companies in our pipeline, and we're looking for capital to scale our operation. Next slide, please. We recently started working with additive manufacturing. And in this, we show that we've adopted a commercial EOS system with a blue laser. It's the only one in the world. On the far right-hand side, you see the high quality prints done in stainless steel and copper to date. This is unmatched in the industry today. In the center, you see the advantage of using blue. In terms of printing copper materials, it's as much as a factor of 7, aluminum, factor of 3, stainless, factor of 3, grid cop, which is rocket motors, factor 1.5, and titanium 1.5. I'll also comment that in terms of printing hypersonic materials, the absorptions are much higher in the blue. We have a direct to phase 2 SBR that's been selected. We're currently looking for Air Force partners for funding this activity. Next slide, please. This is the team of outstanding individuals that are involved in our company today. As you can see, we have a tremendous amount of management experience, ranging from our CEO, Guy Gilliland, to our co-founder, Jean-Michel Pelleprat, our CFO, our vice president, and Dennis Brisson, our vice president of operations. Next slide, please. So we have demonstrated significant commercial traction. As I mentioned, we have over 80 commercial companies engaged with us today. What that means is that they're waiting for the next round of products. The problem we face is we cannot produce those products fast enough. We have invested heavily in full automation of manufacturing of these products, and our demand will still exceed the capabilities of our automation line. So we are looking for the capital to expand this production capability, as well as expanding our marketing and sales worldwide. In our initial DoD efforts, we just started those this year in 2021. As I mentioned, we've already won 2 AFWERX proposals. We have an MOU that we're looking for from the Air Force. We've had a number of conversations with folks on counter UAS. This looks very, very, very promising in terms of what the technology can do. And we think that a sponsor for this is going to be very satisfied with what this kind of advanced technology can do in terms of making a portable counter UAS system that can handle virtually any situation. Next slide, please. So Nubru was founded in 2015. We got a 30,000 square foot manufacturing and engineering facility here in Denver, Colorado. We have the ability to do all kinds of testing, whether it be welding, 3D printing, or defense applications. We have a complete facility with on-site engineers and technicians to help customers to solve their most critical problems. This is the way that we create interest in our technology, interest in our products, and we're able to make traction in the marketplace. Next slide, please.
And we're gonna have to wrap
We're on the end. Thank you. Anyways, any questions, please?
Mark, the fundraising round, is that to primarily develop the products in the defense space, or because defense and 3D printing are quite different industries? So just curious to hear your focus.
The funding round right now is to invest in the automated production facility capabilities and expand our commercial base. The defense base is, as I mentioned, we've just begun working in that area. So we really have not included that in our fundraising calculations at this time.
Go ahead, Tina.
Yeah, can you comment on the energy consumption and the temperature transfer to the substrate? Some of our company use, the existing incumbent laser to melt high temperature polymer. I wonder if it's, too strong of a temperature that would actually destroy the polymer bond and that kind of thing.
That's a very, very good question. So what you can do with lasers, and you have to be very careful when you're designing your system, is you can design it so that the power density is such that it won't destroy whatever it is you're trying to bond, whether it's polymer or not. And in terms of our additive manufacturing, we are doing direct metal. So we're actually melting the metal and forming those parts fully dense, usable as printed. That's unique. Many of the systems out there today have to go through annealing process in order to do that. We have a wide variety of additive technologies that we've explored, and we have tremendous interest from the 3D printing industry on that technology. Does Does that answer your question?
Yeah, does it consume more power compared
No,
to
it's
IR?
more power than what?
IR laser?
Than IR. Today, the blue laser is not quite as efficient as the IR laser, so that is a good question. We're between 35 and 45% efficient. However, the blue laser is in its infancy. And what that means is that its performance is increasing dramatically, in fact, in leaps and bounds. The IR laser has reached full maturity, and it is simply not advancing anymore today. What we expect is that the blue laser will indeed eclipse the IR laser in the future. In addition to that, it has a much, much broader base of markets than the IR laser does, because it can be used in displays, in illumination, and other activities such as that.
Hi, Joshua.
Quick question for you. What are the power requirements on this unit if I were to employ it in an expeditionary counter UAS environment?
So basically, we've designed a system that puts out about 1.5 kilowatts of laser power. So it's going to need about 3 times that. So right around 4.5 kilowatts of input power.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Go for it, Whitney.
If the blue laser has greater absorption, does this make it, more or less kind of susceptible to other things that affect lasers' performance, like weather and things like that? Can you
Great
talk about
question.
that trade space?
Mm-hmm. And we've actually done a substantial amount of analysis on atmospheric propagation. And the absorption is in the materials. Through the air, it's scatter. That's probably higher than the absorption. The absorption characteristics are not that significant for the blue laser compared to the IR in the variety of the applications we looked at, which is counter hypersonic vehicle and counter UAS. Counter UAS is actually pretty short ranges, so it's not that big of an impact. It's only in the case of like counter hypersonics that you're looking at 10 kilometer plus kind of ranges that you really have to have good line of sight. Clouds are a problem for IR or blue. It's the same problem. You got a scattering environment. So that's always going to be a situation. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mark Zedeker from Newborough. And Mark, stay around in the chat to say any other additional questions and also to share your information. Next up is Evoke Nano, and presenting will be David Nilsson, who is the Vice President of Evoke Nano. You there, David?
Actually, it's Brian Bertha presenting. I'm the
Brian, also president of Evoke. Okay, go ahead first.
So thank you for the introduction, and thank you everyone. Great presentations, and really honored to participate in this forum. So we're at Evoke Nano, a breakthrough nanotechnology company, and we create materials that make existing technologies work better. Our products impact multiple verticals in various ways, ranging from killing microbes in healthcare to reducing odors in textiles. Today, we are focusing on improving battery charging and duration. In the battery marketplace, we help rechargeable energy systems. Next slide, please. We help rechargeable energy systems charge faster, hold more charge, last longer, and operate more safely using our material, which I'll discuss more momentarily. But let's start first, next slide, with some of the issues in the battery marketplace. So there's significant future demand, and there is a need for batteries to recharge faster and for them to be more efficient. Let's start with demand with the next slide. Many of you are well aware of the fact that the demand is large and growing. In fact, estimates assume over 300 million home and public charging stations required by 2040. And if you look across the renewable types of batteries, both lead acid, next slide please, both lead acid and lithium and other forms all have large anticipated growth in demand. Next slide. Before we get into the other two issues, let me introduce the product we're discussing. So Evoke Nano uses our patented laser process to produce a gold allotrope. Allotrope just means another form, kind of like diamonds, a different form of graphite, but same underlying chemistry. And from that gold, we create this EVQGA, which is a name for a gold-derived nanoparticle engineered very specifically for different uses, in this case for energy storage industry, and with a particular size and form. The nanoparticles are extremely small. They're spherical in shape. They're consistently distributed in solution, such as an electrolyte solution, and they're non-ionic so that they will not aggregate and fall out of solution. These properties uniquely improve battery performance and address some serious challenges. So next slide. Let's talk a bit about one of the big challenges that is well known in the rechargeable battery space. And that is that as you build faster charging batteries with greater energy storage, that's the challenge. There's a concern of dendrites. Dendrites are large crystals or large electroactive species. And you might consider these the cancer of rechargeable batteries. The big, large crystals cause problems. The small ones are the things that are good. Recharging batteries rapidly forms these big crystals, these big dendrites. They slow the charging process, they limit the capacity, they shorten battery life, and can result in some cases in batteries shorting out, and in some extremely rare cases, combustion. We put here a quote from one of the leading luminaries who wrote in the US National Academy of Science recent article that building a fast charging battery that can suppress dendrites is a holy grail problem. So dendrites are the cancer, and suppressing dendrites is the holy grail that we're pursuing, which then leads us into talking about what happens, next slide please, when we incorporate our product. So on the left, you see a picture where there's a normal one without our product, and you see some of these large crystals in that blue circle. That one's greater than 1,000 nanometers, very large. On the right, you see a picture where our material has been included, and you have crystals that are no more than a quarter the size of that large one. Next slide. The result of having fewer of these large bad crystals and more of these smaller crystals or electroactive species is a faster charging, longer lasting, safer, and more durable battery. Next slide. The formation of these smaller crystals, electroactive species, we've got a lot of tests and data we can share, just a couple here. On the left, you see the two flat lines are control. The two rising lines are the ones where our product's been added. And you see that as the battery was charged more and more, you had an increase in power, over 100% increase in power or amps. And on the right, you see that the charging speed also increased by over 80% faster, which would result in about a 20 to 40% decrease in charge time. So some real exciting results that we've seen in a number of formats. Next slide. The product that we have is different than a lot of nanomaterials, which we could describe more at a later date, but at this point we'll say that there's 22 granted and 23 additional patents have been filed. And of those patents, 9 issued, 10 filed pending are specifically relevant to the battery marketplace. In addition, our team is working with world-class university researchers and have access to National Science Foundation's materials research labs that include access to very, very hard to access STEM imaging and EDS technology. We've received recognition across multiple verticals in healthcare and textiles, and specifically to battery, based on our performance and results. We were asked to speak at the Lead Acid Battery Conference earlier this year. What's next for us? Next slide. We are seeking for partners to work with us. We're seeking to establish up to 10 pilot programs by the end of next month. Partners who participate would receive not just material, but also access to videos, customized support. That would lead to actually testing their own batteries, and then RFPs in November, long-term partnerships and so forth. So next slide.
30-second warning.
Thank you. This is our team. We've got very strong scientists and scientific background, as well as industry leading people on the business development and on the grant application side. Next slide. So we're super excited to work with you and anyone else that you're aware of that's interested in accelerating the future of energy storage systems for rechargeable batteries, and welcome any questions and look forward to any collaborations.
Thank you, Brian. First question from Dana Jensen.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting that you found maybe a solution to the dendrite problem. Obviously, that is a holy grail sort of issue. It's also why a lot of people are throwing their weight behind solid electrolyte applications, right? And if they can overcome the manufacturability problems with the ceramics in particular in a solid electrolyte, maybe that's the solution to dendrites, or that's what they would claim. Could you speak to whether or not your materials would be applicable in a solid electrolyte battery, or is this pretty much, it seems like, strictly in the kind of traditional liquid electrolyte role?
It does apply. They would apply to the oxide paste as well in the solid world.
Okay. Thank you.
You want to ask a question?
Sure, yeah. So I know you have an intellectual property filed in 16 foreign countries. Does your product or marketing or IP include any, which Asian countries do you have presence in IP and marketing or whatnot?
So about half are abroad, and I would love to share that with you. Why don't we do an offline email? That would take longer to describe than I think our time permits, but I'd be happy to share. We have applied for patents across Europe and Asia, and have patents issued across both.
Perfect. Great product presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But please contact me. I'd be happy to discuss further.
Oh, well, thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
Hey, Brian. Nice to meet you. Good presentation. So I'm interested in any ongoing commercial proof of concepts you might be entertaining or working with now. I'm with Mitsubishi Chemical. We're very involved in this space. So the challenge, of course, in any kind of material evolution is getting it into production. So we also found that at Panasonic as well. So I'd really like to hear about your approaching the market players and how you fit in the ecosystem.
So first of all, outside of batteries, we've got active partnerships, and we have actually commercial sales across textiles, oral care. We're in early trials in healthcare setting, but specific to batteries, we have active tests going on with 2 major battery manufacturers, and in discussions with others as well. And we'd love to add more. What we found is that universally across multiple tests, we're seeing improvements in performance, but it definitely differs by the battery company. And so we think the most useful thing is to actually partner with a company and have them tested in their own environment. What's nice about our product is that it's non-intrusive. You add it to the electrolyte and it goes in with the electrolyte or the paste. So you can incorporate it into your battery without having to alter your R&D or manufacturing process.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Brian, from Evoke Nano. Up next is 8i, and presenting for 8i is Hayes Mackaman, CEO.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Let me just share my screen. Oh, you're not, I'm supposed to be able to share my screen so I can present, but I'm not able to.
Coming right up.
Thank
One
you.
second. It should be good now.
All right, thank you very much. There we go. All right. Everybody see my screen okay? Good to go. All right, thanks everyone. I apologize if there's any background noise. I live in a high density area, and apparently the people next door have decided to run a table saw nonstop for the entire day. So in any event, we'll endeavor to do our best. So I'm a CEO of 8i. We're a volumetric video company, which is essentially 3D video, holograms, things of that nature of what we do. I'm joined today by my CTO, and we're also going to perform a live broadcast demonstration. So be prepared to type a link into your Chrome browser, or you can use a QR code with your phone to view it. So we'll get to that in a few minutes. There's a lot we could cover. I think the demo is more important, so I'll give some brief tidbits, and we'll do that, and then we can talk a little Q&A. At a basic level, we're endeavoring to take volumetric videos and use it such that we can improve the way we communicate, learn, work, and play. So, think of volumetric video as where it could be used, think of how you use video, whether it's a Zoom call, whether it's watching a movie, or it's performing a training simulation. It's essentially replaces 2D video with 3D video in an immersive space. So it has use cases and applications across a wide array of sectors, industries, etc. So why do you need it, right? So what is this for? Well, it's really tough to scale 3D computer graphics in an authentic way. So if you look here on your right, what you see a lot today in these sort of social applications, training applications, communication applications is avatars, and perhaps they get your facial hair relatively correctly done, but the rest of you does not look like you at all. It's either off-putting or it can be done better, essentially. And so our goal is to provide that authenticity in an immersive world. In an immersive world, whether it's a virtual reality application, an augmented reality application, or the word du jour these days is the metaverse. Certainly the metaverse is applicable to our technology. From a very basic level, and I'll cover this a little more detail, we're an end-to-end tech stack. So from capturing the performance, transforming it, which is essentially turning it into a hologram or a 3D asset, and then streaming it to any device. We do cover we're an end-to-end solution provider in this space. A lot of, why is this complicated, right? It's okay, we're making video 3D, roll some cameras out. This shouldn't be that hard. And conceptually, perhaps it's not, but as you can see here, our tech stack overview, this is actually it's a pretty complicated array of disciplines that have to come together. So from an internal skill set perspective, we go across mechanical, electrical, and software engineering, including computer vision, artificial intelligence, machine learning, data compression, computer graphic techniques. You have to know how the internet works. I mean, so it's a wide array of skills that we have in-house to deliver this. And so from end to end, you can see here in blue, that's what's kind of our IP or our core technology. We leverage third-party hardware from NVIDIA and other major providers, so we don't make any hardware ourselves. And then we have, we rely in some cases on third-party CDNs, and then we have to understand how content is delivered, whether it's RTC, HTTP, or third-party engines like Unreal or Unity. From a capture perspective, what really separates us in the marketplace is our flexibility. So we're able to support a wide array of capture scenarios dependent upon use case and customer budget. Of course, there's other things that go along with that. If you're more interested in that, we can send these materials a follow-up, but in the interest of time, we'll keep moving. Transforming is where the key software component, where there's a lot of IP and whether proprietary or patented, where we have to essentially fuse all the views and extract a 3D performance. And we can do that offline, which means we have time to process, and we also can do it in real time, so in less than 100 milliseconds. And I'll explain why that's important in a few minutes. And you'll see it in the demo. Of course, you can edit this content afterwards, and of course, and then not only, so now you've taken in all these camera views, you have this large asset, you have to be able to compress it. So we compress data, 1000x ratio, so that you can actually play it somewhere. So it's not just a huge file sitting in nowhere. It actually goes to a device so somebody can view it. Of course, that allows you to stream. So we have a publishing platform as well as a creation platform where you can create experiences in Unity, Unreal. Eighth Wall is an AR tool for iOS, and you're able to view it. So you can capture it, store it, publish it, edit it, view it, whatever you want to do end to end with 8i. So I'll talk, like I said, for the purpose of this group, I think I'm gonna focus more on the communication and education side. There are commercial opportunities in entertainment and commerce that we work with our customers, but I'm gonna focus a little bit on communication education. So right now we've had a long project with MTech, the Futures Command, in two areas: education or training and communication. So essentially the problem that came to us was we are trying to do these VR trainings and augmented reality trainings, and the response is good, except the core men and women find the avatars off-putting, and it reduces the realism, and we can't capture the fog of war as we would like to. Can you help us solve that problem? And so we've created, I'll show you an example here in a moment. We've created VR trainings and an AR training for tourniquets, which is completely, photorealism. It's done by the actual trainers at Camp Pendleton, as well as we developed with them a real-time remote diagnosis system where you can basically capture you can capture a person who's injured or anything like that, and they can be remotely diagnosed in real time by a medical professional or anyone else, whatever the circumstance can be. So you're talking about a system where you can create realism for any virtual scenario, whether it be VR or AR based, as well as you can do remote communication, remote diagnosis, remote collaboration in an immersive space with the real folks in the experience. So it creates a sense of realism and practicality that you've never been able to achieve before.
We should get going with the demo.
All right, so here's a quick clip with the U.S. Army now. Simon, my CTO is in Chicago. If you go to your desktop, you can simply type in the scotty.ai.com/deep tech, or if on your mobile, you can scan that QR code and you will see in live broadcast mode our CTO from our Chicago stage. So feel free to do that at this time.
I think what we're going to do is while people are queuing up the viewer, let's open up the floor to question and answers.
Sure.
Any questions for Hayes?
So far, who do you find to be your beachhead customer? It's super cool. I'll give it 10 out of 10, the cool factor, but I wonder who's the first adopter.
We have a global customer base, so it ranges anywhere from SoftBank is a large customer in Japan. We have LG is a customer in Korea. China Telecom is a customer in China. AIS in Thailand. Anywhere, and then also the U.S. Army, obviously large. We use and it goes all the way to like the WWE, right? Wrestling, it can be. So that's when you get into entertainment and commerce. So it really runs the gamut. We have a global customer base. We're really, why we're here, where we're interested here is we want to take this work we've done in the training and the communication area, remote communication, and really drive that forward, especially in the enterprise and the Department of Defense realm, because there's just a huge, I think that's the best place to start with this technology. When you get into entertainment and commerce, it's consumer-based, it's fun, it's interesting, but it's not delivering the tangible value that you really could in that space. So that's why we're here today, is to really focus on, we're looking to take what we're already doing with the U.S. Army and expand that across enterprise and other elements of the Department of Defense, et cetera. And we do have proposals with SBIR and AFWorks and things of that already out there, but continue to push that forward is really what we want to do. Does anybody any other questions? Is everybody it sounds like you're seeing it okay. That's good. Sometimes usually it's the live broadcast speed works and everything, but that's Simon, our CTO, and it's live in Chicago, and we can do beyond the live broadcast. There is a real-time function, which is an interactive experience. So you can actually, shake hands, talk, almost like a Zoom meeting experience. It's harder to demonstrate to a wide array of folks. So we're sticking with live broadcast today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hayes, from 8i. And any way to be in contact with Hayes is right here. And also, Hayes, please put your email or any way you want to be contacted into the chat.
Contact me here. Here's my info. And of course, if you would like a copy of the presentation for more details, feel free to ask. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much. So with that, with 8i's presentation, we conclude the open topic and we move on to the autonomous vehicles and drones session. So we're going to just make that full screen if you don't mind, Yuval. So we're going to be joined by some excellent panelists. Some who are staying on for the second session. We'll be joined by Colonel Stephen Potter, Chad Stelzig, who's continuing from also the previous session, Joseph Anger from USAF, also from USAF, Ilona Altman, Dana Jensen, also from the United States Air Force, Bob Christopher from Diamond Edge Ventures, from Manhattan West, Henry Chi, from Lockheed Martin, Ryan Hatcher, from Hypergiant, Quentin Dowling, from Hypertherm Ventures, Juan Liu, from Moog, Jeff Errett, and from Activate, Robert Ethier. Companies that are going to be presenting today are Heaven Drones, Terra Autonomy, Robo Tire, Helm.ai, and Sparrow Devices. Next up is Robo Tire. Presenting for Robo Tire is Victor Duralfi, CEO and founder. Hey, Victor.
Hey guys, it's a pleasure to meet everyone. So whether you have a person behind a wheel of a vehicle or autonomous vehicle, maintenance is still your biggest issue. And especially for autonomous vehicles, how does that vehicle know it needs service? Who is checking if that vehicle needs service and who is actually coordinating that vehicle for service, right? That's where Robo Tire comes in. Next slide, please. So you don't have to play the video, you guys can watch it later. But what if there was a scenario where your vehicle, say this autonomous vehicle, could get turned into repair mode? It drove itself to a repair center, got fixed, and was back in your driveway before you woke up in the morning. And everything was taken care of, ordering, scheduling, payment, just like a one-click Amazon. That's what we're going after. And we approach that in 3 ways. Next slide, please. The first is creating a network of robotic repair shops across the US. Currently, we have 1 system live, and we'll be deploying 100 of these by next year alone. Our current platform handles, as our name, tires. We do tire changes, tire rotation, and full assembly swaps. I'll get into the tech a little later, but we can do a set of 4 tires in under 15 minutes from pull in to pull out. We'll eventually bring in underbody scans for dents, stings, rust, alignment checks, suspension check, brake checks, and outer body scans, so we can create a whole platform for vehicle maintenance. Next slide, please. The second step is we don't even have to wait for the car to be completely autonomous to actually start this process. And we do that by integrating a real-time tread depth monitoring sensor into the tires so that they're actually talking to Robo Tire. So we can then predict when tires need to come, which is highly important for fleet managers, meaning if they have a fleet of vehicles and the one vehicle is not due to come back for another month, but we're currently measuring 5/16 on the tread depth, we would then prompt the user to then come and bring that vehicle in, because we know when that vehicle comes back, it will be under the legal limit. Next slide. Then this is the holy grail, right? What we just talked about, of the vehicle talking to our robotic system to then understand its status of health and communicating all of that information. And Robo Tire is actually the one predicting when that vehicle comes in, scheduling it, because it knows its mission or path to do. And we're already developing this technology with the Army through their RCV view. Next slide. So again, the efficiency, right? The powerhouse of Robo Tire is that we're using robots to automate the tire changing process. And like I said, we can do 15 minutes for a set of 4 tires from pull in to pull out. If it's full assemblies, we're sub 5 minutes, almost like a pit crew for fleet management. We alleviate a lot of the labor shortages, the pains, and the vast amount of data that we're collecting that is normally not collected by a human. Next slide, please. So again, like I said, our data is the key for this. We're actually an open API. We can connect either to a car, sensor, shop, it doesn't really matter. And we use computer vision to understand every aspect of that vehicle. And the beauty is that the network of robots. So that means if we make an update, it gets pushed to all the robots instantaneously. Same goes if we add a new bolt pattern or a new feature set, all these robots can learn and adapt by themselves and teach each other. Next slide, please. So again, like I said, there's a changing in the way we deliver stuff. So fleets and micromobility is coming really hard, plus the electrification of vehicles. And what all this means is we're just going to go through tires a whole bunch faster. And as soon as you go electric, gas is no longer the #1 maintenance cost for that vehicle. Tires is now the big one, because tires is sitting at #2. So we've drastically reduced cost per mile and increase the uptime of that vehicle, so things get delivered faster and cheaper. And like I said, our APIs are already talking to cars, sensors, and so on. Next slide. And this is just an overall layout of what we'd install in a service bay. Again, you have 2 robots. If you watch that video at a later date, you can see our robots currently in action, removing tires and all of that. Last slide, please. Again, this is just a quick overview again of Robo Tire, where we are right now. We have a bunch of algorithms built around, how to predict maintenance on a vehicle, not only to tires, but other aspects. We are going live and accelerating with some of the key marquee players in this industry. And we're utilizing the Army and Air Force contracts to basically harden and develop our system for larger format vehicles. And we have a 140,000 square foot manufacturing facility here in Detroit, Michigan, at the heart of the automotive world to build these robots. Last slide. Now it is the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor. Opening up the floor for questions.
Go ahead, Ilona.
Hi, Victor. I've been looking at flight line autonomy. I'm curious if one of your use cases would be aviation aircraft tires. Have you looked at that?
Yes, we actually currently have a AFWERX contract to deploy this at Travis Air Force Base. We're handling most of the vehicles on the runway, but we are also in talks of a C5 to change it for aircraft tires. High level to us, for us to train a model, so a bolt's a bolt to us, a tire is a tire for us, whether it's on an aircraft or vehicle, it takes us 15 minutes to train a new model and for the robot to understand all the parameters and everything about the tire. So it's very quick for us to develop into new verticals for this.
Victor, nice presentation. I've watched you before in previous presentations. You've actually come quite a long way in the last 8 months or so since I saw the first one. Question for you on the applications. You mentioned commercial aircraft. Are you looking at commercial vehicles? Because one of the areas that we were researching and do for logistics back at Panasonic was the UPS was looking for ways to change out their tires and then also do research on their tread patterns. They wanted to figure out basically the driver efficiency using the tread. I just wondering if you are able to capture data on the tread wear and also if you can form factor a larger wheelbase like a truck or a step van.
Yes, we are moving heavily into fleet. That's kind of our next big push. Right now, we cover every vehicle smaller than an F-250 right now. That's just our baseline. Later this year, we'll actually bring out a system to do big rigs. So we'll cover everything from a Prius all the way to a Class A vehicle. So we tap into that fleet. There's a lot of stuff we're doing with a few of the gig economy providers and a few others that I can't really mention at this time. But to your point of being able to use predictive analytics to understand driver and road condition and then environmental conditions. So how's the tire reacting in Maine in the dead of winter versus Arizona in the summer, right? That's all going to affect your wear, tread, and also then do a better job because most fleets don't really rotate their tires. So being able to maximize life out of a tire, especially for a fleet that is, some fleets are do 4 tire changes a year, right? So there's a high volume of tires being changed. So yes, we're building all that in the back end as well.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Victor from Robo Tire. And next up is Rob Ogden, CEO and founder of Terra Autonomy.
Great, thanks for the opportunity to present. I'm Rob Ogden, CEO and founder of Terra Autonomy. Next slide, please. I'm leading a team of experts in autonomy, computer vision, networking, and large-scale services from places like Tesla, Microsoft, and GM Research. Next slide, please. So in an ideal future, transportation would be data-driven, connected, and autonomous. If you think about a clean slate designed for a smart city, everything in that environment would be sharing data. So the vehicles, the traffic lights, pedestrians, cyclists, everything would be available in a full picture of data that would allow for a high level of automation and the optimization of safety and efficiency. Of course, in reality, things are much messier, and that's because of the legacy of the built world. most things can't or won't share data. So things aren't networkable, don't share the same protocols. More importantly, many things simply don't want to share data. So a person may not want their cell phone tracked. Uber may not want to broadcast the location of all their fleet vehicles and the like. And this means that there's a very incomplete picture of the world in data. This leads to minimal automation, fatalities increasing, and congestion compounding. So importantly, 80% of crashes could be avoided or mitigated by V2X, which is a NHTSA estimate. So moving towards this ideal could have a huge impact on society at large. Next slide, please. So how do we progress towards this connected and autonomous world given the limitations of today? Next slide, please. Our vision is called the Geomobility Cloud. It's a high fidelity 3D geospatial mobility map, contains the location and tracking of all moving objects like cars and pedestrians, the state and status of infrastructure, like traffic lights. It's software defined and massively scalable. And importantly, it's based on permissionless data capture. So like I said, there'll always be actors in the environment that aren't willing to share data. So it's important to get a full picture in data. You need to do this permissionlessly. Next slide, please. So our system uses cameras for geospatial mapping, and the benefits of camera sensing are that they're low cost, high quality, they're easy to scale, and they're already deployed at scale. So they're already deployed in the up to millions in across different locations around the world. Next slide, please. So this is a demo of our product. It's comparing us to a Bosch product called Bosch Intiox, which is doing 2D object detection. They're using a $5,000+ camera, and we're using data captured from a GoPro. Press play on the video, please. So you can see here, sort of basic 2D object detection, lagging vehicles. It's not accurate, but it's doing some tracking, but it's limited what you can do with 2D object detection. First, what we're doing is 3D geospatial mapping. So we do 3D detections of moving objects. What that means is that we can give those objects geospatial coordinates. We can put them on the 3-dimensional globe. We can view them from any perspective, like this satellite view. And this is a side-by-side. Next slide, please. So the differentiation between us and other sensing technologies is essentially that we can do a lot more for a lot less. Our hardware is based on generic off-the-shelf cameras, so we can use cheap cameras, basically sub $500. We can do 2D and 3D detection, as I showed, which is important. Classification, multi-sensor fusion, so more sensors means better quality of data, and we're cloud native. The combination of all these things means that we're scalable in a way that other technologies simply aren't. And so, particularly the more advanced technologies are very expensive and hard to maintain. Next slide, please. So a case study of this, and to illustrate it, is deploying full coverage on the I-10. The I-10 is 2,460 miles. It's one of the deadliest highways in the United States, and deploying across that entire length would cost less than $30 million, as opposed to 2.3 miles of an Atlanta Smart Corridor project in 2017, which cost $3 million. Next slide, please. We think this is coming at a good time because the American Jobs Act has allocated $44 billion to what the DOT is calling transformational projects in infrastructure. This includes billions for research, billions for deployments, and $44 billion in total. Next slide, please. And so we think that we're absolutely a transformational technology. Not only are we able to enable huge benefits in safety, as I mentioned before, but efficiency, which ties into safety because fewer accidents means less traffic disruptions. And then all these things and making people and objects move around in the environment more efficiently has a big benefit on sustainability as well. So safety, efficiency, and sustainability, which are really the 3 top priorities of improving transportation for the future. Next slide, please.
30-second warning.
So our data pipeline, our business model is software as a service. We have a computer vision model that can be deployed at the edge, the control center, or in the cloud. We fuse those data outputs into a 3D map and then derive analytics and alerts to service customers in the smart cities market and the connected vehicles market. Next slide, please. Competitive advantages are numerous, but to be quick, I'll just focus first mover. We're new. Network effects. We're building a literal network. There's a lot of proprietary IP into realizing this vision. And then we're supply chain neutral, so we don't see GM using a Toyota system or Tesla using a Waymo system. So we're a new link in the supply chain. Next slide, please. We have a LOI to run a pilot in the city of Los Angeles, which is going to be 1 year, and then we're moving to commercialization in year 2. Next slide, please. And our vision is to be the nerve center of global connected autonomy, enabling various use cases across automating infrastructure and vehicles. Next slide, please. We're looking for partners in government agencies, automakers and their suppliers, as well as telecommunications companies. Next slide, please. And we're seeking $4 million in a seed round currently, and are talking to many investors. We have 500K in institutional commitments and have raised less than 100K to date. And that's the presentation. Open it up for questions. My CTO and co-founder, Philip, should be joining as well.
Henry, how about you lead with your question?
Yeah, sorry. How does using the normal cameras compare to the others like Bosch, like you had listed up there?
Favorably. So, the demo that we showed is, a GoPro, right? So it's not, optimized for this specific use. We just need a, basically a clean data feed that we can use to, put through the computer vision algorithm.
I didn't realize they were all that clear, but that one looked pretty clearer than I'm used to seeing. That's why. That's all. Thank you.
Hey, Rob, this is Quentin from Hypergiant. Great presentation. My question is kind of where your compute is taking place, this classification, detection, tracking, segmentation. Is that happening on the device or near the device, or is that happening kind of like at a localized hub, or are you doing all that in the cloud?
I'm gonna let Philip jump in on this one if he's available.
Hey, my name's, excuse me, I'm Philip, the CTO. Yeah, so the beauty of our software is that it's basically hardware platform agnostic, so we can deploy it on the edge or in the cloud. And so it's really set up to function well with whatever types of cameras are set up infrastructure in cities. Yeah.
We have Colonel Stephen has a question.
Yeah, I sent this in the text chat, but have you guys worked at all in off-road autonomy?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Have you worked in off-road autonomy?
Not personally. I don't know, Philip, if you have that experience.
Sorry, in off-road autonomy? Do you mean just
for military? Yeah, military ground vehicles that would be going across off-road.
I don't have experience in that. Generally, I would say this application is focused on where there are existing cameras or cameras can be installed. So it's mostly focused on either roads or basically mappable areas.
Yep, got it. Thank you.
That could include, though, for some members of the audience, things like a military base. So, an airport could even be, the inside of a warehouse. Really, the core tech is about, detecting and tracking and mapping objects in three-dimensional space.
Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, I got two quick ones. First is, what's your plan to gain access to these cameras? And at one point you mentioned having information about the state of the traffic signals, reds and greens. How do you plan on gaining access to that? And then you had a 80% reduction in collisions. That's a pretty bold statement. I'm curious how you are going to accomplish that level of safety improvement with your offering.
Sure. It's a three-part question. So the first, try to remember sorry, can you break it down and go one by one?
Access to data, access to agency data. What's your plan there?
Yeah, so, the agency is, will be our customer, and whether it's, on at the device level or where, video signals are aggregated, like in a control center, basically we don't necessarily need access to the firmware of a given device. We just need the video output. And so as long as they want us to process the data, it should be accessible. But of course, we would like to work with hardware providers, and we're talking to companies like your own about integrations and things like that.
Yeah, and then the 80% reduction in collisions. How do you get there?
Yeah, so that's just the NHTSA estimate as to what CV to X could provide, and so really that is it's just sort of parroting that statistic. But I think the idea is there that you can basically giving a vehicle, even a not smart vehicle, or even a driver via cell phone, emergency alerts or emergency braking information or things like that. You can prevent collisions, right? And so, an example, we were at an ITS conference recently talking about Tesla that on autopilot that emergency braked, but basically there was your classic like late pileup, multi-car pileup. It didn't have enough braking distance. Its headway wasn't long enough. But if you could give the vehicle knowledge that 3 cars ahead, someone's already emergency braking. You can't even see them yet, or there's debris in the road, or those kinds of things. Those are all basically creating a 3D picture of the environment gives you the ability to understand and sort of operate it more safely.
Thanks. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
If you want to wrap it up for us.
Sure. Real quick question as just a follow on to Colonel Potter. Maybe it's more of a statement, but you mentioned you're doing a proof of concept pilot. I'm working off-road, off-highway autonomy, and I'm just curious, like Colonel Potter said, I'm focused on construction sites, airports, anything that isn't on a highway. Have you looked at that as more of a more forgiving first place to try, because there's less things to go wrong, and more willingness to let you try things out?
Yeah, so we're definitely looking at, I guess, contained environments, I guess, is what I describe that as a potential, way to scale initially. But we're sort of exploring partnership discussions with different kind of parties, that some that are in that category and some that are more like DOT type partners. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was Rob Ogden from Terra Autonomy. Next up and last for the autonomous vehicles and drones session is Heaven Drones. Presenting will be Ilan Regenbaum, Vice President, and Heaven Drones is a company based out of Northern Israel. Welcome, Ilan.
Thank you. Thanks, Josh. Pleasure to be here this evening, or evening for me, afternoon for you all. My name's Ilan. I'm a VP of strategy, but basically as the first business hire here, I'm VP of everything. And today I want to talk to you about our Heaven Drones platforms and why we think the future of drones is actionable and what that means. So, next slide. So Heaven Drones is a company that was founded actually 2 years ago yesterday in order to build what we call the next generation of actionable drones. Because what we saw in the market, and it's actually very fitting right now, I'm sitting in Jerusalem right now. We've been plagued by forest fires in the last couple of days that have just been devastating the forests around here. And so our CEO and CTO developed the initial drone that they created as a firefighting drone that was able to carry small pellets of fire retardant and to be able to search out the beginnings of a fire and put it out as the drone detects it. And so they define this as an actionable drone, a drone that is able to not just take pictures or see a situation, but to act on that situation. And while we no longer create that drone because we've done more research into the market and understand the market needs, we have seen that a lot of drone users today, whether it's in the government or commercial markets, are looking for drones that are able to fly longer, lift heavy loads, and be able to perform actions, whether it is delivery, but also more advanced types of use cases and missions. And so we've created a platform and a number of different types of drones in order to achieve just that. And so I'd mentioned, next slide. what we call an actionable drone. And so we define that as a drone that has the ability to be highly stable. We have a patented stability system that allows our drones to carry kinetic and highly unstable platforms, heavy as well as adaptable payloads. Our different payloads can be swapped out or customized very easily, and also to be able to fly for significant amounts of time. This trifecta of capabilities allows a drone not just to be a camera in the sky, but rather more of a flying robot that is able to achieve something. Go next slide. And part of that vision is not just creating, and I'll talk about the products and the platforms themselves, but it's about being able to provide the tools for that drone to be able to achieve the mission that's needed. So we have a lot of customers in the Homeland Security and defense sector. So we envision a drone, what we call the container vision. So of our 3 drone platforms, to be able to have interchangeable payloads that are able to, on a different day, whatever unit or search and rescue unit or FEMA, for whoever it might be, can take a single drone platform and very easily plug and play different platforms and payloads to accomplish the mission that they need that given day. A number of those payloads we're developing on our own, but we have a number of partners, third-party partners. So we're in many ways developing an app store for drone payloads so that third parties will be able to develop for our drone platforms. Next slide. And I've spoken about drones, but we don't just make normal drones. We hold a number of different patents that allow our drones to be very different and more capable than what's on the market. We have a number of patents that allow our drones to utilize typical lithium polymer batteries to be 80% more efficient. We're creating a hydrogen fuel cell powered drone. We have a patented stability system that allows our drones to carry kinetic payloads. And we also have a number of different patents regarding our payload connection systems and the payloads themselves. Next slide. And the drones themselves, we have 3 different platforms. 2 of them are currently flying and being used out in the field. The third one, the H250, which is our biggest and will be our flagship model, is still under development. But the idea being is that our smallest drone, the Urban Heaven, which is currently the workhorse drone that most of our partners and clients use today, is an FAA Part 107 compliant drone, sub 55 pounds, that can carry and fly longer than most other offerings in the market, but it's highly customizable with US and allied developed parts to avoid any security risks. Next slide. And we've, in the last 2 years, so I have a lot to discuss because we're not just a drone platform. We consider ourselves a complete vertically integrated technology provider for drone solutions. So besides all the different technologies that I mentioned, we're also developing our own flight controllers, because right here today, the title of this presentation is about autonomy. Drones, the technology there is available to be able to fly autonomous, but regulation is not there. And so we already enable some of our HLS and government customers to fly autonomously. The regulation, especially in the FAA, doesn't allow just that. But one of the systems that we are creating is a fully integrated flight controller that can control all the functions of the drone, the payload of the drone, but also allow autonomous and computer vision and machine learning assisted flight of the drone, as well as BVLOS and remote flight. All of that comes to this slide where traction. As I said, the company is 2 years old yesterday. We have a number of different clients here in Israel, mostly on the defense side, including many of the major primes here in Israel. We've run pilots with the largest HMO in Israel, delivering medical supplies and tests, a number of different Homeland Security and defense related pilots and customers, as well as a number of different customers all around the world that are not yet public. Our smallest drone is undergoing type certification in the US, and all of our 2 platforms that are flying are certified already by the Civil Aviation Authority here in Israel. Next slide.
30-second warning.
And part of that traction is not just creating drones and certain technologies that exist, but looking for future drone technologies. We have been awarded the as the sole provider of hydrogen drone technologies for the Israeli Ministry of Defense, and are working with a number of our partners in the US Department of Defense to create a fully hydrogen powered drone and the technology surrounding that. Next slide. We've raised a couple $1 million. The company is planning to go for Series A in the next 6 months to a year. Almost 30 employees, a number of different patents, subsidiary in the US, and a facility for manufacturing in Israel as we expand to US manufacturing and operations. Next slide. And the way we're achieving this, I myself have spent a number of years in the Israeli Air Force, founded a number of companies, have a background in venture capital, but it all comes down to our CTO, who has spent 30 years building drones before we even were calling them drones. Israel, to this date, the Israeli military operates the oldest drone squadron anywhere in the world. So Israel is very well known for creating drones from many, many years ago, and we remain a world leader. And so we're looking to take our quad, hex, and octocopter drone configurations and take autonomous drones to the next level. So thank you for your time, and if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Ilan. I'm assuming Jeff Baird has a question. Jeff, do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Good.
So
Yes.
So yeah, I'm pretty familiar in the space. I run a joint venture focused on last mile drone delivery. So I'm up to my eyeballs in type certification for UAS and the FAA market.
It's fun stuff.
Yeah, so I'm also aware of all of the costs and time and heartache that goes into that. So where are you guys focused? Is it the defense side or the commercial side? Because those are, while you can do everything, and I see a lot of drones and different types. There's a lot of investment that has to go with each one of those, especially on the commercial side. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on your strategy. What's your number one area, and then what's 1A or 1B?
Short term, we are very much a dual use company because in the short term, we know that there's not too much of a market on the commercial side, especially as regulation is still catching up, especially in what will be our biggest market, United States. I'd say 90% of our customers and pilots today are all in the defense and homeland security space. And as the commercial market continues to develop, we will happily work with a number of our partners, but over the next 3, 4, 5 years, our main focus is the defense market.
Wonderful. Last question by Quentin.
Yeah, I like this idea of actionable drones and bring your own payload. But when I see a bucket hanging underneath the drone, my questions are, are there training activities that need to take place before the drone can learn the dynamics of that new payload? Is that entirely a software configuration? So I can bring a payload and tell you what mode you need to be in. Can you kind of walk me through how that happens and kind of what sort of hardware or software or both sort of configurations you need to be able to deal with to do that? Bring your own payload.
Yeah, so to date, one of our patents and one of our technologies is a stability system that is specifically built for our drones that is able to in real time identify the payload and to be able to correct. And so I have a great video of the drone actually flying with that with a 55-pound oil drum. With wind blowing as the barrels rocking back and forth with contents inside the barrel and able to adjust and not flip. That technology is integrated in all our drones, but is going to be part of what I'd mentioned before, integrated flight controller, which not only will be able to control the drone itself, but also to be able to control the payload and to be able to interface with that payload. So through a single UX, an individual will be able to control the drone. The drone will be able to adapt based on what that payload is doing, and then also control the payload itself. So obviously there will be onboarding and integration involved in all of that. But our goal is through our what will be an open source flight controller and drone controller to be able to plug and play as many possible payload configurations as possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ilan. Be sure to follow up. We have a request from Colonel Potter to reach out. Also some questions in the Q&A. And have a good night.
Thank you very much.
That concludes our autonomous in vehicles and drones session. We're about to jump right into the last session, which is IoT data and defense for autonomous systems. We're continuing to be joined by Colonel Potter, by Chad Stelzig, by Dana Jensen, and we're also joined by Srini Ananth from Intel Capital, Sarfaz Nawaz from Johnson Johnson, Rose Chen from Wesco Distribution, from Capital Factory, Helena Krusek is joining us, from Microsoft, Tim Laverty, from Liberty, Dr. Andrea Ruotolo, Lockheed Martin, Ryan Hatcher is continuing with us, and as well as Quentin Donnellan from Hypergiant, and Juan Liu is joining us from Hypertherm Ventures. So without further ado, the companies pitching today is Geminis AI, Coiled, Form Logic, Vendita, and Trust Central. These are the last 5 companies pitching of the day. We're moving on to the next company, Vendita, and presenting will be Doug Solinger, who's the CEO. Doug, you there?
Yes. So Vendita has been around since 2008. We are a data-driven company. We started our roots in working with companies like IBM, Canadian government, and we've been able to help them with their data needs, managing the data within their organizations. From that, we recognize a fundamental problem. It was about how people are managing data and how they're doing it differently across the organization. So we built a product called Master Automation Solution called Moz. The tool basically provides business continuity, operations, and data management. Next slide. The fundamental problems that organizations are having, and we got huge statistics about the amount of data that's growing every year. The other thing your people are dealing with is trying to find resources that know how to manage the data that's inside of organizations. If you've gone out to the market and looked at these types of resources, they're very expensive and they're very, very scarce. The other thing is when it comes to managing this data, the legacy systems that have been out there are mainly 20 years old or older. I know we have representatives from Microsoft on the line. Some of the tools that they have to manage your databases have been around since the 90s. Next slide. Our validation on this, there's 2.5 quintillion bytes of data created every day, and 90% of the world's data had been created in the last 2 years alone. Well, that's great that we have all this data out there, but if you don't know how to manage it, you can't fundamentally go into business intelligence. You can't fundamentally get your artificial intelligence tools to work, and you're never be able to get your big data analytics that you're looking for. And the problem that organizations end up having is down here, $3.1 billion in lost revenues. We actually have a statistic about how much businesses lose in efficiencies per year from Gartner Group is almost $10 million on an average. And then losing customers is almost 20%. So by the fact they're not able to manage their data efficiently, they're fundamentally running into just basic business operational challenges. Next slide. How is it done today? If you go in, most of your data is housed in one of these different databases, and we handle the 5 major databases that are out there all under one single pane of glass. So what happens is if you go to Oracle, you end up having 37 clicks to be able to manage how that data is constantly coming into the data, it's into that database, and how do you handle the backups and the monitoring, all that. You have to go to a bunch of different clicks. Now you got, and go to all these different screens. Now you got Microsoft. I got to go to a whole nother set of screens. Then I have a whole bunch of different decisions and a whole bunch of other clicks. Now, wait a minute, I've got somebody in my business said they brought in, Shadow IT and MariaDB, or now we want to go to Postgres. And now you're the database administrative team, and you got to manage all these different systems, lots of different tools, and lots of different inefficiencies around that, and lots of different decisions to manage that. Next slide. This is what Moz does. It's one single UI for all those databases in your organization. It's real simple. You pick the job you want to run as a database administrator. You pick the database you want to run. You select that database and you hit submit. It's that simple. No more 37 clicks, 27 clicks from different screens, different user interfaces. It's all done in 3 simple clicks, and all that knowledge is housed in there. And if you put specific IP in there, we actually maintain that in what we call a query wallet as well. So you have the same 3 clicks, no matter whether it's a customized or comes, and Moz also comes with most of those processes built into it. Next slide. Fundamentally, Moz is the foundation you have to have in your organization to manage your databases. It's just what you need to have in there, because you're never going to be able to get to this digital transformation, because you're not going to get more resources to help you make that transformation to the cloud, or maybe go to help you with your big data projects you've got in, or do your business analytics to help you make better decisions. We do automation, consolidation, and visualization of your databases and all the data that's out there. We're the foundation it takes to build your digital transformation. Next slide. Here's a lot of other points that we have. We can go into these. One of the things, if you look at the bottom, we are one of 10 companies that actually are a verified tool. So we used our roots to talk about how we go to our roots about software and software compliance. We're one of 10 companies that can come into your organization and tell you how much Oracle you're using today. We also have the same capabilities with Microsoft across the database. Tell you what you're using today and what you're out of compliance with. Next slide. We did a lot of validation. So we already did a study in there. One organization we found out we can make them 42% more efficient. It wasn't we got a red of people. If they wanted to, there was $378,000 of savings. We've taken this to the Pentagon. We got support from the CTO. Gartner Group's validated this. We're the only platform in the marketplace that has a single pane of glass that does this operations across all these databases. We also have support from Oracle as well with our verification of our compliance. Next slide.
30-second warning.
This is the market we have. We're not looking at the tools that the OEMs provide, but we are just looking at the tools that are on the market today, and we already have a $10 billion market cap. Total addressable market. Next slide. We looked at the market itself and all the competitors that are out there. If you look at software asset management, most of those tools are millions of dollars in 2 years to implement. If you're looking at automation, there's mainly OEM tools that are out there, but then you got to go buy another OEM tool. When it comes to monitoring, there's lots of monitoring tools out there. It's a saturated market out there, but they do not do the database operational efficiencies. We're the only one that have the automation, software asset management, and then we also gather all the data around the database you need for your SOX compliance. Next slide. This is where we are today. Moz 4.5 was just released here at the end of June. We've just gotten to the marketplace. We're targeting 65 new customers with about 75,000 each. And we think that's actually a small number. We've got a number of partners that want to take it today. We're looking at the following year, we have an ARR of over 3 million, about a $10 million business by the end of 23. Our traction that we have today, the full version is allowed. We've used different parts of the product. We just now brought it together under one platform. We've got more than 20 customers we've got either in the pipeline or sending quotes out to. We've got inbound. We've brought in our 3 reps. We've got incubators coming to us and asking to help us into the oil and gas. And we got them through Deep Tech gentlemen. So I want to thank you for that. Next slide. This is the team. I've worked for IBM. I've led $500 million projects. Gene is the one that keeps track of all of our money, make sure we don't spend more than we should. And this is really Bill's technology baby. He's published books. He's a DBA by trade. He's built these types of tools in the past. He's the one that really has the technology behind him. Next slide. It's simple. This is a seed round for us. We're looking for $3 million to get started. We have it laid out. And then we're going to do a Series A funding round sometime in 2024 is what we're expecting. Any questions?
Open up the floor. Any questions for Doug and Vendita? Doug, I think you did a really good job explaining yourself, and no questions related to you.
Thank you.
Last chance for a question for Doug. I'll ask one quick question. Doug, considering where you're at and the money you're raising, and the fact that you've already made it simple from 37 clicks to one simple system, what's the plan with the money?
It's mainly expansion. So we're going to add more value to the platform. We've already put over $6 million into it. So I bootstrapped the beginning of it. It's really about getting it out to the market. We brought in an inbound marketing team. We want to add more sales reps. We have 3 sales reps. We want to add 4 more. We find that, you know, even though it's a simple concept, it is going to take a little bit of actual one-on-one sales. Then we want to add customer success managers to it. So when you buy the Moz product and you have help, you're going to need help somewhere along the line. So when you learn about what the product does, say you lose somebody, which happens all the time. There's a lot of turnover. You can literally come to us, and our customer success managers are still going to be database people. So if you need us to take on a small project, we're going to help you along with that. So we want to be that true partner. We built the company by responding within an hour to any question we ever had and getting back to people within a day. So we're going to keep that, maintaining that, and we're going to truly love the customers that we have. And that's what we're adding people on for.
Okay, one last question also related to finances. What's the average cost working with a customer, and what is your cost and your team? So in other words, what is your average contract size, or what do you expect it to be, and what is the cost it costs to you?
It costs around our average customer cost for a small shop that has 3 to 4 DBAs in it. You're looking around $100,000 a year for that. And our cost of supporting that, you know, we have a burn rate right now. We can support probably 40 customers with our current infrastructure, and we're at $220,000 a month burn rate. So we're not seeing, you know, we're seeing that our percentages of support is probably less than 20%.
Wow. Okay. Thank you very much. That was Doug Solinger, CEO of Vendita. And we're moving on to a next presenting company. Jamie Lynn's going to be presenting, and also together with Damian Stolars. Jamie is the CEO of a company called Trust Central. Jamie and Damian, do you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Perfect.
Great. All right, and Jamie should be on. Let's see if she's going to unmute.
Hi.
There we go.
Hey. All right, yes,
So,
hi, I'm Jamie Lynn. I'm the CEO of Trust Central, and I'm going to present today with our CTO, Damian Stolar. So we're going to talk first, of course, about market needs. Next slide.
Next slide.
Yeah, so we hear on a daily basis about a new hack on our favorite medium of communication, right? Like WhatsApp, SMS, or Signal, and also in consideration of our military troops who bring their personal tablets, smartphones into combat zones. They're all at risk of being hacked by hostile actors in detrimentally high risk areas. Equally, of course, related to our defense, malicious interceptions and threats and attacks on power grids, the Army, aviation, weaponry, robot satellites, you name it, they're all exponentially occurring. So the truth is we need now, and I'm sure you guys would all agree more than ever, an extra layer of trusted cryptographic solutions that bypass those security dependencies operating on such mediums, and to focus cryptographically authenticating the sender and the receiver themselves is where Trust Central's focus is. So next slide. Our team's vision, so Trust Central, we secure communication and enabling these devices and people to communicate with verifiable privacy to any destination on any platform over these untrusted, insecure networks. Next slide. Goes to Damian.
Sure. So our whole approach with this and our mission is to it's very easy if you're a crypto expert, a cybersecurity expert, to understand all the things you need to do in order to secure something. Our approach is to create technologies that makes it possible for the rest of us to basically know that our information is secure and know that it's being communicated correctly. We spent a lot of time on R&D, almost a decade-long effort of creating new techniques, and the focus of it that I'm going to get into is how can you make things connect when how can you make things secure and authenticated when you have a hostile network underneath?
And so we want to create this safer environment. Next slide. If there's some way you could take the gray bar off of it as well. There we go. So what is our unique technology? Our chief scientist is a gentleman named David Kravitz. Dr. David Kravitz was one of the original co-inventors of DES, which we all use today, every day in our crypto. He spent a long time developing new technologies because a lot of security has to do with a centralized control, and it doesn't handle decentralization, and it really doesn't handle situations where you need flexibility, where new connections are being made all the time. And finally, it doesn't handle situations where there's a new communication technique every new month. There's a new app, there's a new transport, and yet you're trying to provision devices that were on that. Our focus at Trust Central is to focus, instead of the endpoints, we focus on the relationships. And so one of the innovative technologies we've got is these crypto-enhanced relationships. And by focusing on securing a relationship between you and someone else, or you and another device, we're able to guarantee delivery no matter what transport. Next slide. Our core engine, which runs on many platforms, iOS, Android, etc., embodies these technologies we've developed. And it's a whole toolbox of techniques that you can use to secure communications. Next slide. And the first application that embodies this is our Trust Central mobile communication application. And
Do we just lose Damien?
I think we lost him. I guess I'll carry on. So this is our application that we have in use currently with 5 design development partners. And it's an overlay, as we mentioned, a security toolbox that can be used on iPhones. And it's an extra layer of encryption that goes on Signal, SMS, Dropbox, etc. So next slide, please. So our competitive advantages in delivering our world-class security is fundamentally we're transport agnostic, and these independent tools offer a really back end of accounting. So we can monitor and track the transmission receipts. It has geofencing, rule enforcements that cryptographically protect the messages as they're transferring from sender to user. So again, we are securing the sender and the user as opposed to at the device level. Next slide. So when we talk about traction, our R&D, our patents, we have 13 patents. As he mentioned, our chief scientist, Dr. David Kravitz, worked at NSA for over 10 years. So much of our time has been spent securing our 13 patents, and we are now in the development with our application finished and moving forward in the use cases, in particular with medical. Most of our clients right now are in the medical, Air Force, and law firms. Next slide, please.
Jamie,
Okay.
let me just, since I got back, let me just go through the couple of use cases. So our engine, the 1.0 version of our engine is what we currently have deployed. We are adding new abilities, new platforms as we go forward. But a couple of the use cases we're talking about is sensors. You deploy a new sensor, you want to make sure that it can only communicate. Using our algorithms, we can ensure that you can quickly provision a new sensor and make sure that it will only phone home, it won't be intercepted, but also that you can trust that sensor to join a network of other sensors. Or you in a UAV scenario where you have to quickly change the controller. Let's say you had a mobile device and now that one's defunct, you still need to control this UAV. And the UAV needs to be able to trust that you can hand off control either to another inherited trust personnel or to another device. And then finally is this communication case that we've been talking about, where someone has their secure laptop, they're trying to phone home to headquarters. Suddenly their VPN is not working and they can't get a normal communication. They still need to get a communication home. And using Trust Central, they could use an off, an off authorization channel such as email, and know for sure that the only person who is going to receive it would be their commander, and their commander on the specific phone that commander had set up the relationship. So those are some of the use cases.
15-second warning, guys.
Okay, cool. Well, so in our roadmap, he briefly described that, and we'll, I guess, jump ahead to our ask. So we're in progress of a current financial raise for future productization, considering that our user-to-user application has been completed and now moving into the hopefulness of obviously securing device control customers. So we've raised 2.5 million. And having said that, our first ask would be for individuals in the civilian military alike who need secure communication lines, novel tools. We have this groundbreaking app, so we'd love for you to use it and work with us. And second, in transitioning over to working in enterprises and military who also need this device level personnel provisioning, IoT, unmanned aerial vehicles, remotely piloted aircraft, battleships, what have you, as Damien mentioned. So having said all this, next slide, this is our world-class team. And of course, we all look forward to speaking with you guys. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Open up the floor for questions. Dr. Rutola, how about you start us off?
Thank you. I was wondering, are you planning to sell these to end users or to sell it to technology companies that will incorporate this into their systems?
A lot of the latter. We've created a mobile application to demonstrate the technology, because it's hard when you hand someone a toolbox and they say, what do I do with these tools? So the first is, and we have customers who for years that had wanted us to make communication tools so that when they're using WhatsApp or they're using email, that it works. So those are both a real application and a demonstration of the platform, but our primary goal is to find customers in devices, the more complex customers where we're part of integrating into their stack.
Thank you.
Quentin.
Yeah, that kind of, that kind of leads into my question, which is, you have your demo app that you say is built on top of this core platform. How tightly integrated or coupled or decoupled is that app with the platform? Is there like a seamless integration layer where like I don't have to worry about any of the certification, like there's certificate management, I can just pipe data and you handle all the relationship bits, like that integration layer? Can you talk about that some?
Yeah, right now we have a controller that's tied in with our 509. So we have our controller and our provisioning as an app, and right now we're hosting it for our mobile apps. When we get into a customer scenario where they need that, almost all the customers we've talked to either have that infrastructure or they want it, set up in the exact way. So most likely it would be set up in a Docker environment and then hosted for you in your own sort of hybrid cloud or on-prem or whatever.
Last question from chat.
Yeah, I'm curious, is there a use case for the secure transmission of video using your technology?
Absolutely. That actually happens to be my background. We're initially going to demo it in the app primarily for the purpose of initial authentication. So if you're trying to provision someone out in the field and you're like, I don't even know if this is the right guy, you get on a video conference call using WebRTC, you provision them in. The usual use of a video would be, you'd have a set of symmetric keys that would encrypt that video. So any transport would be possible with it. And so our certificate enforced relationships, you would set up a rule and you'd be like, okay, this person, the key's like this, it's expiring like this, et cetera. So absolutely, this is usable in that environment. And we have a deep roadmap understanding of where to go with that.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jamie and Damien from Trust Central. Please leave your information in the chat so people can get in touch with you. Great presentation.
Great. Q&A or chat?
I have the chat. I think it's better at the chat. Next up is presenting from Coiled, Gus Kavanaugh. Gus, you there?
I am here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, take it away.
Excellent. So hey everyone. We're Coiled. We scale Python for data science. As some of you may know, Python is a very popular open source programming language. If you're a first-year computer science student today, you're probably learning Python. It's particularly popular for people who are doing data science, AI, machine learning. The PyData stack, packages like Pandas, NumPy, Matplotlib, among a bunch of others, are especially useful for this. And analysts, data scientists, they love these packages because they work, they're really easy to use, and unlike SAS, SPSS, and other tools, they are free. There is one challenge though, is that these tools do not scale. And so if you have data that doesn't fit on your laptop or on a single machine, or you want to work with a cluster of machines, because as others have told you, right, there's huge data volumes and they're growing, you're a little bit stuck at the moment. And so this is an open question. And let's go to a random person on Twitter from 2 weeks ago. What is the best way, memory speaking, to read in a 100 gig file? So something that doesn't fit in memory, but isn't actually that big. The Twitterverse responds, read the file in chunks, download more RAM, don't use Python, maybe also pray. And one good Samaritan pops up and says, I'd recommend you use something called Dask. So Dask is an open source package, it's Python, and it scales the PyData stack. So if Pandas, NumPy, Matplotlib, they're great for data science because they work, they're easy, they're free, but they don't scale. Dask scales those packages. And as often happens on Twitter, you give a helpful suggestion and someone's going to shoot you down. And this guy says, no, don't use Dask. You should use Spark, maybe with the commercial entity Databricks behind it. And our good Samaritan responds, Dask is similar, it's distributed, it's native in Python, so it's really easy to use. And this random person says he'll check it out. So that's wonderful. But do any companies, do any enterprises actually check out Dask today? Walmart does. For their in-store forecast, they have a big job that needs to run within 12 hours each day. They use Dask to scale this workload across a big cluster of machines so it meets their SLA. In life sciences, there's tons and tons of Dask usage. So Novartis, Chan Zuckerberg Institute. This is a high resolution cellular image from the Harvard Medical School. These at the end of the day are just, whether it's genomics or cell images, they're just giant arrays, and Dask does a really good job of processing them in parallel. Also, financial services, hedge funds are big users of Dask. Anytime you swipe a Capital One credit card, it's going to be running Dask on the back end. For one of their credit scoring applications, the ML engineering team at Capital One saw a 100x increase in speed and a 97x decrease in cost when they moved this workflow over to Dask. Now, they then added more data so they could keep their budget. They certainly didn't give that money back. But what they were able to do was take a task graph, this disgusting thing over here on the right, and they were able to parallelize it really well with Dask. And they don't just use Dask, they use commercial software to manage their Dask clusters, and that's what Coiled provides. Coiled provides Dask as a service for the enterprise. So quickly recap this: Python, popular programming language, good for data science and machine learning. Dask scales Python where it doesn't scale. Coiled provides Dask as a service. It provides managed Dask clusters to enterprises. And I know what you're thinking, hey, why wouldn't Azure or GCP or AWS just provide this as well? If it's so popular, they could just eat your lunch. Well, today, when Dask users have questions, they tend to go to the people who wrote Dask. This is Matt Rocklin. He created Dask. He gets lots of questions. He spent the last 5 years helping companies like Capital One, while working at NVIDIA and Anaconda, various hedge funds deploy Dask and optimize it. Matt founded Coiled. We raised a $5 million seed round, and then a couple months ago, a $21 million Series A, so we can scale out Coiled to a bunch of other enterprises who use Dask, but don't manage it with Coiled. So today, Coiled is the easiest way to scale Python via Dask. Tomorrow, using the metadata we gather from the product and just via conversations with customers, we will be the fastest way to scale Python via Dask. So when people like Jamie Dimon write in their annual report, hey, we need to adopt AI in cloud as absolutely fast as possible, there will be a zillion commercial solutions that are adopted. However, we know there will be lots of Python, and as a result, there will be lots of Dask to scale that Python, and those Dask clusters will be managed by Coiled. Our ask today, we recently are very proud to have signed a contract with help from those here with the United States Air Force. We are deploying Coiled on GovCloud. If you are on GovCloud and you're interested in Dask, you're interested in scaling Python, please reach out to me. I'm in sales, gus@coiled.io. If you are not on GovCloud, but you are interested in scaling Dask, you're interested in scaling Python, please reach out to me, gus@coiled.io. Coiled runs in all the major clouds and on-prem. So we're Coiled. We scale Python for enterprise data science. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gus. Great pitch. Any questions for Gus and Coiled?
Well, I had one, but then he said on-prem, and so I kind of want to double click on that. Are you targeting any specific devices like Snowflake or something like that for on-prem deployments of Dask?
Yeah, excellent question. So for Snowflake being a SaaS, a web-hosted database, there is an open source Dask connector for Snowflake. So for users who want to read data from Snowflake into a Dask cluster running in the cloud or on-prem, that does exist. Coil did develop that kind of piece of technology, but we open sourced it, so it's not specific to us. Anyone using Dask could use it. So yes, that's a big part of our strategy. Snowflake doesn't necessarily love that because it removes compute from Snowflake, but it's certainly good for Dask users.
And for curveballs, I get my nouns jumbled up. I said Snowflake, I meant Snowball. So that I'm going from GovCloud to Snowball there. So are you targeting like AWS Snowball or something like that for on-prem?
We run on either bare metal VMs or on Kubernetes. We can deploy Coiled in a bunch of different ways, but no.
Any other questions for Gus? Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Gus. Gus is from Coiled. If you have any questions for Gus just leave information in the chat so that people can touch base with you. Next up is Geminis AI. Geminis AI is going to be the last company pitching for the entire event and also rounding out the IoT data and defense session. So pitching for Geminis is Greg Fallon, who's the CEO.
Hi, thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for your time. So we're a relatively new startup. We're in the seed stage. We're about 2 years old, and we make AI for industrial systems and processes. And the point of the company is to create a SaaS offering that's simple, repeatable, and easy to deploy. So if we go to the next slide. Just a little background here on the problems we're trying to solve. So if you think about Industry 4.0, which is taking IT into the operating realm for the industrial space, the solutions are primarily based on sensors and data, which tend to be difficult to deploy and offer limited benefits. From a deployment perspective, expensive retrofits are often needed to existing equipment to add sensors. Large data sets are needed for analytics and to train machine learning algorithms, and the number of people, data scientists, that are needed to deploy that is often sizable. And at the end of the day, with existing solutions, you end up getting information about equipment, but not entire systems, and information on equipment states, but not the processes themselves. So if we go to the next slide. So what Geminis is about is simplifying Industry 4.0. We combine models of different fidelity, high fidelity models like computational fluid dynamics, along with lower fidelity models that could be something like a pumps curve. We fuse them with IoT data so that the models are actually trained on and aligned with a real process and piece of equipment. We enhance them with machine learning and AI, and we represent them as a connected system. At the end of the day, the deployment is simple. It's a SaaS software that a process engineer uses to develop a system model. We then connect that model to a set of an IoT sensors or platform. And at the end of the day, we deliver intelligence about the entire system and information about the process. And so if we can go to the next slide, I can tell you a little bit more about what that looks like. So Geminis Flow Intelligence is the name of our digital twin deployment platform. It's focused on optimizing process productivity, reliability, and sustainability for industrial flow systems. And industrial flow systems could be everything like an industrial plant. That could be a chemical plant, it could be a power plant, but it also could be the control systems for a transport vehicle like a ship, or the control of an industrial machine, which would be a mini system unto itself. There are three things that Geminis delivers with our techniques. The ability to see what's happening everywhere across the system and process at all times, even if there are not sensors at the location you're looking at. We give the ability to detect anomalies or changes in the system and identify root causes of those changes without the need for historical data. And we offer the ability to optimize system performance, to look at how assets interact with other assets within the system, and make process changes and through scenario evaluation, see what changes would result into optimized performance of the system. So if you go to the next slide, a simple case study to help understand what this would look like. This case study was done in a steel plant. We created a digital twin of a water cooling system. This cooling system that we were twinning was an older system. It was built in 1965. It had very few sensors. There were 10 sensors across the entire system. The system was having reliability issues. Every time the system went down, it would take the entire plant down at a cost of $3 million an hour. And the replacement of the system was cost prohibitive for the plant. So again, the system had limited number of sensors. Sensor upgrades were cost prohibitive. And the system consisted of multiple pumps that were interacting with each other in ways that were complex and not easy to categorize. Go to the next slide, please. So first, how you might deploy a traditional Industry 4.0 solution with sensors and big data. So in order to characterize this system, the first thing you'd have to do is add sensors to the pumps, pipes, and valves. This would require a shutdown of the plant, new data collection systems, IT staff to build and manage the systems. It would also require collecting training data, large volumes of training data so that you could try to predict what would happen in the future, and that can take months and possibly years. You would also need data scientists to analyze and build the machine learning models. And again, the outcomes would be asset-based, so based on the individual equipment, and even then they would be limited in their predictive range and accuracy. So the industry standard is about 60% accuracy to predict a failure, and even then you're getting hours of warning, not days, weeks, or months. You're confined to okay, thanks. Confined to individual assets and expensive to scale. So if you go to the next slide. So the Geminist approach is to create a digital twin of the full system. This is a deployment that takes, typically in this plan, it took 3 weeks with one engineer. We were able to work with the existing sensors. We were able to rapidly create the model. We didn't need historical data, and the outcome was that we had a full twin running with a system. We could identify what was going across the entire system and optimize the outcome. So if you go to the next slide, please. Our traction today, so we've had 6 POCs to validate the technology. We have 1 large customer in the semiconductor area. That's a strategic partnership, and we're looking to grow our pipeline with leading Fortune 500 companies and government entities. If you go to the next slide, please. So our ask is 3 things. One is pilot deployments with industry leaders. Those pilots would result in potential partnerships with domain leaders to help us take our horizontal platform and tailored for specific industry or application needs. We're looking for those partners to help us with go-to-market in terms of selling through and sell with relationships. And we're also in the middle of a raise to fund growth to our Series A. That's it.
Got a couple questions. Let's start with Rose Chen.
The question for you is, the industry is quite saturated with solutions very similar to in the digital twin in the industrial space. So how do you differentiate yourself? What are currently in the existing, some of the large manufacturing companies also working in this particular area?
Yeah, so Rose, that's a great point. And the digital twin, traditional digital twins are very, it's a very busy space, as you pointed out, but there's major problems, as I alluded to, with deploying digital twins today. It requires machine learning and lots of sensors. So we're solving that particular problem by going into a SaaS framework that's easy to deploy and requiring fewer sensors and no historical data. Josh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I just gone, Dr. Ruatola, more than welcome to ask your question.
Thank you, Josh. Greg, well, I have to jump to another meeting, but I will leave my email here if you would like to explore some partnerships. I know companies that might be interested in this offering.
I would love it. Thank you very much. We'll reach out.
Dr. Ruatola is from Liberty, and Rose is from Wesco.
Great. Thank you, Rose and Dr. Ruatola.
Any last questions for Greg? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Greg. Greg was presenting from Geminis AI. And Greg, maybe you'll leave information in the chat so others can be in touch with you. This wraps up the final session of the event. Just a quick recap and a way to say thank you to, first and foremost, to the panelists. For this event, we had Colonel Stephen Potter from the 75th Innovation Command. We also had Chad Stelzig from Image Sensing Systems, Dana Jensen from United States